something they don't. You still hear the insults, you still see the drama, but it no longer enters your system. It touches you, but it doesn't move you. But let's be honest, how many times have you let one careless comment ruin your whole day? How many nights have you stared at the ceiling, replaying an argument, getting angry all over again, even though the moment's long gone? Most people don't live in peace. They live in reaction. They don't own their emotions. Their emotions own them. One insult, one rejection, one unexpected look, and their entire energy shifts. Not because the world is that powerful, but because they never learned how to take that power back. But here's the truth. Stoicism taught centuries ago, and neuroscience confirms today. You can become emotionally untouchable, not cold, not numb, but untouchable, like a mountain in a storm. The wind howls, the rain crashes, but the mountain doesn't move. That's the inner strength we're unlocking today. And once you've got it, you'll never be thrown off by what someone says. You'll never feel small because of someone else's mood. You'll never again be angry or bothered by anyone or anything. We're not just talking about staying calm. We're talking about complete emotional sovereignty, real stoic power, the kind Marcus Aurelius wrote about, not just to look wise, but to survive the weight of an empire without losing his soul. So, stay with me. What we're about to dive into will reshape how you see people, how you handle triggers, and most importantly, how you master you. And hey, if you appreciate what we're doing here, the clarity, the calm, the tools to live unshaken, there's just one small favor I'll ask. Hit the subscribe button. It's free, it helps more than you know, and it's the kind of support that keeps this content flowing. It's not them. It was never them. That's the first shift in perception you need to make if you want to stop being angry, triggered, or emotionally hijacked by others. You think it's the way they spoke to you, the disrespect in their tone, the way they dismissed your effort or rolled their eyes. But that's just the surface. What really stings is what those moments awaken inside you. Something deeper, something older, something you're not even fully aware is there. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That's what we do every time we blame other people for how we feel. We hand over the keys to our emotional state and then wonder why we're always being driven into chaos. But here's the truth. Nobody can make you feel anything without your participation. Anger, frustration, resentment, they're not caused by other people. They're caused by your response to them. And that response is shaped by the unresolved parts of you that you've been avoiding for years. Think about it. Two people can face the exact same insult. One brushes it off, the other stews in it for days. The insult didn't change. The difference is what it met inside. We're not reacting to what they said or did. We're reacting to what it touches in us. Old wounds, expectations, unquestioned beliefs. And more often than not, it's not even about the moment. It's about everything that moment reminds us of. When someone ignores you and you feel invisible, that pain isn't born in that second. It's a repetition, a mirror. Maybe it's reflecting all the times you felt overlooked growing up. When someone criticizes you and you explode, that reaction didn't come from the words themselves. It came from a need to protect an identity you've worked hard to maintain. Maybe being seen as competent or good or strong is so central to how you view yourself that even the slightest crack feels like a collapse. That's the real battlefield, not the conversation, not the coworker or the partner or the stranger online. It's what's happening in you. Aristotle said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." And self-knowledge isn't just knowing what you like or what your goals are. It's understanding the places in you that still hurt, that still seek approval, that still think peace has to come from being treated a certain way. Here's where the breakthrough begins. You are not your reaction. You are not your anger. You are not your pain. You are the one watching those things. You are the awareness underneath it all. The more you connect to that awareness, the less you need the outside world to behave perfectly in order for you to feel okay. That doesn't mean you have to tolerate disrespect. It means your peace is no longer dependent on the presence or absence of it. That's a whole different level of freedom. Because most people aren't really living, they're just reacting. One text ruins their whole morning. One comment online derails their whole mindset. One bad look from someone else, and they spiral into self-doubt. That's not living. That's surviving on emotional autopilot. But you can step off that ride, and it starts when you stop making them the villain in your story. The moment you stop saying, "They made me feel this way," and start saying, "Something in me responded to that," everything changes. You take back your power. You begin to ask better questions, not "Why are they like this?" but "Why does this bother me so much?" Not "Why are they so disrespectful?" but "What am I holding on to that makes me so reactive to this?" That question, "What am I holding on to?" is where you'll find most of your answers. Plato once said, "The first and best victory is to conquer self." And conquering the self isn't about suppressing your emotions. It's about understanding where they come from and deciding if they still serve you. It's about noticing when your pride wants to fight back, when your ego wants to be right, and choosing not to be led by that. This isn't passivity, it's power. It's the power to choose your response, to feel the rise of emotion and not let it run your next move. That kind of control isn't something you're born with. It's something you train, like a muscle, like discipline, like presence. The people who trigger you the most, they're your greatest teachers, not because they're wise or kind or helpful, but because they show you exactly where you're still attached, where you're still raw, where you've built an identity that depends on others treating you a certain way to feel valid. And when you use those moments as mirrors, not battlefields, you grow. That's the difference between reacting and evolving. Socrates once said, "Let him who would move the world first move himself." And that movement doesn't start with changing your environment. It starts with watching yourself more clearly, becoming aware of the stories you tell when something doesn't go your way, the assumptions you make, the roles you play, the truths you hold on to without question. When you believe someone should treat you better and they don't, that gap between expectation and reality becomes suffering. But when you accept that people will act based on who they are, not who you are, you stop tying your emotions to their behavior. You become unshakable, because your peace is no longer reactive, it's rooted. You don't get offended as easily. You don't chase apologies. You don't need everyone to get you or agree with you or like you. You know who you are. And that knowing becomes your anchor, even when the storm hits, even when someone disrespects you, even when life feels unfair. Because you've stopped trying to control things that were never yours to control. You've stopped outsourcing your peace to people who are just as lost and reactive as you once were. You've stopped depending on the world to reflect back your worth. That's what Stoicism has always been about. Epictetus taught that we should concern ourselves only with what's within our control, our thoughts, our actions, our beliefs. Everything else, what people say, what they do, how they treat us, is external. If you anchor your calm to the external, you'll never be steady. But if you learn to rest it in the internal, nothing can move you. That's the invitation, to move through life with grace, not because life is gentle, but because you are grounded, to face criticism, rejection, misunderstanding, and remain clear, not numb, not shut down, but strong, centered, awake. The next time someone tries to provoke you, let it pass through. Don't deny the reaction, just don't identify with it. See it rise. Watch it fall. Let it be what it is, a ripple, not a wave. And if it still gets to you, if the sting lingers, if the thoughts come back later, good. That's not failure. That's the doorway. That's where you walk through and say, here's where I still need to do the work. Because the goal isn't to become emotionless. The goal is to become emotionally free, not controlled by impulses, not ruled by pride, but aware, intentional, unbothered, not because you avoid life, but because you face it so deeply, it no longer scares you. And when you live from that place, people notice. They may not say it out loud, but they feel it. The steadiness, the calm, the energy that says, you can bring me chaos, but you won't pull me into it. That's not arrogance, that's mastery. And if you've made it this far, there's a reason. Some part of you knows it's time to stop giving your peace away to people who don't even know what they're doing. Some part of you knows that your calm is too precious to keep handing out in exchange for approval, validation, or control. You weren't born knowing how to react to rejection. You didn't arrive in this world with a detailed manual that said, when someone disrespects you, flare up. When they ignore you, crumble. When they criticize you, defend your pride at all costs. Those reactions, the quick anger, the defensiveness, the need to prove something, those were learned, passed down, absorbed, like second-hand smoke. You didn't write the script, you just started playing the part. That's what makes this so powerful to realize. Most of what you think is you, your temperament, your triggers, the way you react under pressure, isn't actually you. It's conditioning. It's habit. It's a script that started writing itself long before you were aware it was even happening. Somewhere along the way, maybe someone taught you, directly or indirectly, that being ignored means you don't matter. That being challenged means you have to fight. That being wrong means you're not enough. These beliefs are like hidden code running quietly in the background of your life. And until you bring them into the light, they'll keep directing your reactions without your permission. Carl Jung said it best. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That means every emotional outburst, every sudden shutdown, every time you overthink something someone said, that's not fate, that's not your personality, that's programming, and programming can be rewritten. But you can't change a script you're not aware you're acting out. So the work begins by becoming the observer, not the actor. You notice, you pause, you step back just far enough to ask, what part of me is speaking right now? That question, when asked sincerely, opens the door to everything. Because the moment you feel triggered, the moment something or someone lights a fire in you, it's easy to believe that fire is righteous, that it's justified. But strong emotion doesn't always mean truth. Often it just means the script got activated. And when you keep playing out the same emotional loops over and over, with different people and different situations, you start to notice something strange. The actors keep changing. But the storyline? It's always the same. That's the giveaway. It's never really about them. It's about what they awaken. And most people never take the time to trace the fire back to the spark. They don't question the reaction. They just assume it's valid because it feels real. But intensity doesn't equal accuracy. Just because you feel it deeply doesn't mean it's rooted in clarity. And when you start to unpack those reactions, what you'll often find underneath isn't strength, it's fear. Fear of the quiet strength of someone who knows their worth and doesn't need to scream it at the world. Because when you're still running an old script, it's not just your emotions that suffer, it's your relationships, your peace, your potential. How many doors have you closed because you reacted too quickly? How many connections have you damaged because the old story said, if they don't respect me immediately, cut them off? That story might have protected you once, but now it's probably keeping you small. Taking authorship of your reactions means you're no longer a puppet of past pain. You start recognizing the patterns. You feel the heat rising, and instead of acting on it, you sit with it. You ask yourself, what would my highest self do here? And then you do that, even if it's hard, especially if it's hard. Socrates once said, the unexamined life is not worth living. And if that feels too heavy, let's flip it. The examined life is where you find your peace. That's where you begin to experience something rare in this world. Sovereignty over your inner world. That's not something someone gives you. That's something you claim. And yes, it takes work. Yes, it's uncomfortable at times. Watching yourself isn't always fun, but neither is staying stuck in patterns that keep you reactive, restless, and resentful. When you stop reacting from the script, you start writing something new. You stop being the echo of every harsh word you've ever heard. You stop playing out roles written by fear, ego, or childhood defense mechanisms. You start living from choice. And people around you will feel the difference. They'll notice you don't flinch the way you used to, that you're not baited by sarcasm or passive aggression, that you don't need to win every interaction. You'll stop chasing closure from people who can't even give it to themselves. You'll stop needing every misunderstanding to be corrected. Sometimes you'll just let it go, not because you're defeated, but because you've chosen peace over performance. That's emotional authorship. That's power. And here's what's even more beautiful. When you start living this way, your presence becomes medicine for yourself, for others. You give people permission to slow down, to reflect, to drop their guard, because your stillness reminds them that maybe, just maybe, they don't have to keep playing the same roles either. So the next time you feel triggered, remember this, that first surge of emotion. It's not you, it's the script, and you don't have to follow it. You can pause, breathe, reclaim the pen, and write something better. Every time you do, you become less of a puppet and more of a presence, less of a reaction and more of a response. And that, right there, is the path to peace. Because the only real control you have is how you choose to show up. Not what they do, not what they say, just you, your awareness, your choices, your script. And if you've come this far and something in you is waking up, if this resonates in a way you didn't expect, it's not by accident. You were meant to hear it. You didn't lose control when they said the words. You lost it the moment you took them personally, that split second when your heart tightened, your jaw locked, and your mind began spinning with comebacks and judgments. That was the real surrender. The moment you got offended, you gave away your power, and most of us do it without even realizing. Not because we're weak, but because we've been trained to believe that offense is a natural, automatic response. Someone insults you, you feel wounded. Someone disagrees with you, you feel threatened. Someone misunderstands you, and suddenly you feel invisible. But what if that pain, that sting, that emotional drop wasn't something that happened to you, but something you allowed? We live in a world where offense is currency. It's how people bond, how they gain attention, how they define themselves, by what makes them angry. But when everything offends you, you're no longer responding to reality. You're reacting to a fragile self-image, one that requires constant protection and reinforcement, and that's exhausting. Aristotle once said, "Anybody can become angry, that is easy. But to be angry with the right person, to the right degree, at the right time, for the right purpose, and in the right way, is not within everybody's power. He was pointing to something most people overlook. Real emotional power isn't found in reaction. It's found in restraint, in discernment, in choosing what deserves your energy. Because here's the thing, offense is not objective. What hurts you might not even register for someone else. It's not the event, it's your interpretation. It's the story your mind tells the second something uncomfortable happens. They're disrespecting me. They don't value me. They're trying to hurt me. And once that narrative locks in, your nervous system reacts as if it's the truth. But offense isn't an alarm. It's a mirror. It reflects what parts of your identity are still fragile, still unhealed. That's where your real work lives. Not in silencing the world around you, but in strengthening the world within you. Because when your sense of worth depends on everyone treating you perfectly, you're always at risk. One sharp word, one misstep, and your peace disappears. What makes someone truly unbothered isn't numbness, it's clarity. It's knowing that your value doesn't rise or fall based on someone else's opinion. It's knowing that you don't need everyone to understand you. You don't need every comment to be kind. You don't even need to be agreed with. What you need is to stop volunteering your power to people who haven't earned it. That power isn't something they take, it's something you give. Every time you let someone's words decide your mood, every time you shrink or explode to defend an identity, every time you let offense define the moment instead of your principles. And the more often that happens, the more you train your mind to look for disrespect, for betrayal, for injustice, even when it's not there. Plato warned us long ago. We can easily forgive a child who is afraid of the dark. The real tragedy of life is when men are afraid of the light. And this is exactly that. We become afraid of truth, of growth, of self-responsibility, because it means we can no longer blame the world for how we feel. And that's uncomfortable at first, but it's also freeing. Because if you're not responsible for your reactions, then you're just a puppet. You're always at the mercy of the next person's behavior, the next careless comment, the next disagreement. But if you are responsible, then everything changes. You realize you have options. You can pause, reflect, reframe, choose. You can learn to ask yourself better questions in the heat of the moment. Not, why are they like this? But, why does this hit me so hard? Not, how dare they? But, what part of me still needs this kind of validation? That level of self-honesty might sting at first, but it liberates you, because it puts the focus back where it belongs, on your inner world. You start to see offense not as an injury, but as insight, as feedback, as a signal that something in you is still raw, still seeking approval, still trying to prove its worth. And when you can look at that without flinching, without running, without blaming, that's when you start to grow. Socrates once said, "The secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new." Getting offended is often just fighting the old. Old beliefs, old stories, old defenses. But when you stop feeding that loop, you can start building something stronger, a new default, one rooted in confidence, in composure, in quiet strength. You stop reacting from your wounds and start responding from your values. You become harder to provoke, not because you're colder, but because you're wiser. Because you know the difference between something that's harmful and something that's just uncomfortable. Between disrespect and misunderstanding. Between actual threats and imagined ones. The moment you realize you don't have to respond to every challenge is the moment you step into a deeper kind of freedom. And that freedom isn't about letting people walk all over you. It's about refusing to let them walk inside your mind without permission. Let's say someone insults you, You hear it, you feel it, but you don't react. You don't internalize it, you watch it like a passing car. It's there, you see it, but it doesn't hit you. That's not detachment, that's self-respect. You respect yourself enough not to let a few careless words rewrite your self-image. And when you operate from that place, your energy changes. You stop needing to prove yourself in every interaction. You stop getting sucked into pointless arguments. You stop throwing away your peace like it's cheap. And people feel it. They may not say it, but they sense the difference. That groundedness, that emotional weight, that quiet command that says, I'm not here to be triggered, I'm here to be free. Freedom, in this sense, isn't just about time or money or lifestyle. It's emotional sovereignty. It's knowing that you are the one in charge of how you feel, not the world, not the crowd, not the algorithm, not the stranger in the comments. You. And yes, it's hard sometimes, especially when the insult feels personal, when it echoes something you already feared was true. That's when offense feels most justified. But it's also when the opportunity for growth is greatest, because it invites you to look inside and ask, is this something I believe about myself? If it is, work on it. If it's not, let it go. Either way, you win. Carl Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. That quote alone could change your life if you take it seriously, because it shifts the whole focus from blame to clarity, from defensiveness to depth, from being a victim of every interaction to becoming the master of your inner experience. That doesn't mean you won't feel things. You will. You're human. But feeling something doesn't mean you have to act on it. And that's where power lives, in the space between the feeling and the action, in the choice to breathe instead of lash out, to listen instead of argue, to let the moment pass without turning it into a storm. So the next time you feel the sting of offense rising, remember, this is a fork in the road. You can give your power away, or you can keep it. You can replay the insult in your head all night, or you can see it for what it is, a passing thought from someone who may not even understand themselves. Because in the end, what offends you reveals more about you than it does about them. It points to the edges of your ego, the cracks in your confidence, the places you're still not fully at peace with who you are. And when you heal those places, the world stops being so loud, so hostile, so threatening. You start to move differently, speak differently, think differently. You don't walk into every room trying to protect yourself. You walk in already whole. It's about knowing you don't need to be offended to stand strong. And when you finally stop giving it away, that power becomes yours again, fully. But he did remind us that most people are carrying something invisible, an old betrayal, a deep fear, a relentless voice in their head that never lets them rest. And when that pressure builds, it erupts, often onto the wrong person. That doesn't mean you should accept mistreatment. It means you no longer mistake it for truth. This is how you hold your ground. You recognize the pain. You honor your own boundary. But you don't take the insult into your identity. You don't let someone else's behavior rewrite your story. You just let it pass. Not because you're weak, but because you're finally strong enough not to need their validation. And what happens over time is remarkable. You start to see patterns that were invisible before. You notice how often people lash out after being hurt, how quickly coldness follows insecurity, how silence often masks fear of rejection. Suddenly, the behavior that once confused or wounded you becomes easier to interpret. You stop guessing what's wrong with you and start understanding what's unresolved in them. That shift is subtle, but it's everything. It's the difference between spending hours trying to fix yourself to win someone's approval and spending that same time returning to your own peace. It's the difference between reacting with anger and responding with clarity. It's the difference between making someone else's wounds about you and letting them stay where they belong. But let's be honest, this isn't easy, especially when the words cut deep. When they come from someone you love or someone you trusted. In those moments, it's natural to feel shaken. That's okay. You're not a robot. You're not here to be untouched. But you are here to be aware, to notice the reaction, to witness it, and then to remind yourself, this pain is theirs, not mine. Because the moment you internalize it, you make it part of your identity. And once it's in there, it becomes harder to shake. You carry it into the next interaction, the next relationship, the next version of yourself. And before you know it, your reflection is shaped not by truth, but by wounds that never belonged to you. Aristotle said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. So is peace. So is presence. So is emotional freedom. It's not a one-time epiphany. It's a daily choice. To return to your center, to see things clearly, to feel the pain without becoming it. The next time someone is sharp with you, try this. Pause. Take one breath, then say silently, "This is their storm, not mine." You don't need to fix it. You don't need to understand it. You just need to know that it's not a reflection of you. And if that helps even once, if it saves your peace for one day, then it's worth it. Because the people who bleed on you, they may never know the impact of their words, but you do. And that awareness gives you something rare, the ability to stop the cycle, to end the transfer of pain, to feel what's happening around you without letting it redefine what's happening within you. So when the world gets loud and the comments get sharp and the people around you forget their own worth and try to project it onto you, stay rooted, not defensive, not dismissive, just steady. No one tells you this when you're young, but the deepest emotional pain you'll feel in life often won't come from what people do. It'll come from what you expected them to do, and they didn't. That sting you carry, the disappointment that lingers, the tension you replay in your head late at night, it's usually not about the words said or the silence that followed. It's about the invisible contract you were holding on to, the one that said, "If I'm kind, they'll respect me. If I show up, they'll value me." they are, not because they're trying to force an outcome. When you remove the hidden strings from your actions, you start doing things from love, not leverage. You expected them to do and never questioned until it was too late. Socrates reminded us, the only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. That includes knowing how someone should respond or what someone should feel. The truth is, the thing that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. And what irritates us most? When people don't act how we imagined, when reality doesn't match the emotional contract we were secretly holding. But instead of using that as fuel for frustration, use it as fuel for growth. If I'm successful, everyone should respect me. These rules seem invisible, but you feel them every time someone touches a nerve. Every time someone questions you, interrupts you, underestimates you, or doesn't see you the way you see yourself, something inside tightens. And it's not just discomfort, it's fear. Fear that this identity you've built is being challenged. Being willing to let them soften. Being willing to let them soften. Being willing to question them. Because when you ask, who am I, really? Most people respond with roles, titles, labels. I'm a good person. I'm a leader. I'm not someone who gets disrespected. But these identities are often built defensively, not to express who we are, but to avoid who we fear being. So we hold tightly to them, and the tighter we hold, the more easily we break. What if your identity contract didn't need to be defended? What if you didn't need to be seen as right all the time, or strong all the time, or unbothered all the time? What if you could just be, without explanation, without apology, without the mental gymnastics of proving who you are? Socrates reminded us, the unexamined life is not worth living, and when you stop to really examine your emotional patterns, what you often find is that pain follows protection. The more you protect an identity, the more vulnerable you become to anything that threatens it. That's not confidence, that's prison, because then your peace depends on how others see you, how they speak to you, whether they get you or not. But freedom. Freedom is knowing who you are at your core, beyond the job, the compliments, the reputation. It's being secure when no one else questions your behavior. It's being rooted in your values, even when someone misunderstands your actions. It's the quiet knowing that you don't have to be seen as perfect to be whole. Aristotle believed that knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom, but knowing yourself means more than just being aware of your preferences or goals. It means being willing to dismantle the identity you've built if it's keeping you from peace. It means asking, is this version of me helping me grow, or just keeping me safe? Safe from judgment, safe from rejection, safe still learning, still evolving, still unfinished. And when you let go of the identity contract, something surprising happens. You become less reactive. You stop seeing every disagreement as a personal attack. You stop needing every interaction to affirm who you are. You don't need to correct every misunderstanding. You don't need to chase every lost perception. You can let people think what they think because you know who you are, and that knowing doesn't need defending. But here's the paradox. The ego convinces you that defending your image is strength, that being seen as certain, unshakable, and always composed is the goal. But real strength is humility. It's being able to say, yes, I used to believe that. I've changed. Or maybe I was wrong. Or I don't need to convince you. That's not weakness, that's power. Because now your identity isn't rigid. It's alive. It breathes. It adapts. It evolves. And it doesn't collapse every time someone pushes back. Think about how much energy you've spent trying to manage your image. How many words you've used to explain yourself. How many moments you've lost replaying a comment or conversation just because someone didn't see you the way you wanted to be seen. That's not living. That's reacting. And reaction is always rooted in fear. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of not being enough. Fear that if the image cracks, you'll fall apart. But you won't, because you are not the image. You are the awareness behind it. Carl Jung also said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not who you were told to be, not who you think you have to be, who you truly are when you strip away the labels, the pressure, the performance. That version of you doesn't need applause. It doesn't need defense. It just exists, steady, present, and real. And when you start living from that place, you become untouchable in a different way. Not because nothing affects you, but because nothing defines you without your permission. You're no longer chained to reactions. You respond from clarity, from wholeness, from depth. That's why the person you think you are, the one you've been holding on to, is often the root of your suffering. Because as long as your peace depends on protecting that version, you'll never feel safe. You'll always be chasing approval, dodging criticism, trying to stay inside the lines of an identity that may have served you once, but now just limits you. So tear up the contract. You don't need to be the smartest in the room, or the most respected, or the most agreeable. You just need to be honest with yourself about what you're still clinging to, about the parts of you that still feel like they need to earn love, respect, or belonging. Guided by truth, your truth. The one that doesn't require performance or perfection, just presence. At some point you learn to wear a mask, not the kind you see in costume shops, but the invisible kind. The smile when you're hurt, the silence when you want to scream, the confidence that hides uncertainty. It didn't happen all at once. Maybe you started shrinking your truth in a relationship to keep the peace. Maybe you held back your pain to avoid being seen as dramatic. Or maybe you overachieved, over-explained, overcompensated just to feel like you were finally enough. The mask isn't evil. It was born from survival, from moments when you felt it was safer to perform than to be seen. It helped you navigate a world that isn't always kind to authenticity. But as time went on, the mask stopped being a tool and started becoming your identity. You forgot where it ended and you began. And now you're exhausted, not because you're weak, but because living out of alignment is one of the heaviest things a person can carry. Every interaction becomes a calculation, every conversation a performance. Every room you walk into feels like a stage where you have to measure your words, tone down your opinions, or play the part others expect of you. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But before you can become that person, you have to let go of who you're pretending to be. The version of yourself built to impress, to protect, to please. That version might have gotten you approval, but it never brought you peace. It might have kept you liked, but it didn't make you feel loved, not really, because you always knew deep down they weren't loving you, just the mask. And that's where the suffering begins. Because pretending is a kind of betrayal, a soft one, a subtle one, but a betrayal nonetheless. Every time you silence your truth to be accepted, a piece of your soul pays the price. Every time you laugh at something that hurts you, downplay your needs, or act unaffected when you're actually falling apart, the gap between who you are and who you present widens. Socrates once said, "To know thyself is the beginning of wisdom." But knowing yourself requires looking at the parts you've hidden, not just from others, but from yourself. It means asking the hard questions. Who am I when no one is watching? What do I believe when I stop trying to be agreeable? What do I actually want, not just what's expected? The answers might shake you. They might unravel the persona you've spent years building. But what's waiting on the other side is something infinitely more real and more peaceful. Because when you burn the mask, you stop negotiating for belonging. You stop earning your worth through performance. You stop being afraid of being misunderstood because you finally understand yourself. Aristotle said, "Happiness belongs to the self-sufficient." And self-sufficiency isn't just about material independence. It's about emotional sovereignty. It's the ability to show up as you are, unapologetically, and let the world respond however it will. Some people will draw closer, some will walk away. But either way, you're finally being seen, not for the role, not for the reputation, but for the soul beneath it all. There's a kind of freedom that only comes when you stop protecting the mask. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's quiet and steady. It looks like speaking honestly, even when your voice trembles. It looks like choosing peace over perfection. It looks like no longer needing to prove your value in every room you walk into. And no, it doesn't mean you abandon growth. It means you grow from truth, not pressure. It means you develop, not to become what you already are. You're not chasing wholeness anymore. You're coming back to it. When you live without a mask, your presence becomes magnetic. Not because you're trying to be impressive, but because you're real, because people can sense when someone is grounded in their truth. There's a quiet strength in it, a peace that doesn't need to be explained. The world may not always reward it, but your soul will self-completely. But if you can do that, if you can look at your fears, flaws, and desires without turning away, you'll stop needing the mask. Because now you're not hiding from others. You're no longer hiding from yourself. Most people walk through life hoping it'll be smooth, calm, predictable. They say things like, "I just want peace," or "I can't handle another problem right now," as if life is supposed to wait until they feel ready. But life doesn't ask for your permission. Chaos doesn't knock before it enters. The question is never if it'll arrive. It's how you'll handle it when it does. That's the difference between being reactive and being ready. Emotional resilience isn't built in peaceful moments. It's built before the storm, in silence, through something the Stoics called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. The idea was simple but powerful. Visualize what could go wrong before it does, so you're not blindsided by it. Not to create fear, not to attract suffering, but to rehearse your response, to train your mind for impact before impact hits. Most people don't do this. They walk around with unspoken assumptions. Today will go well, people will be respectful, nothing will go wrong. So when someone's rude, when a plan falls apart, when emotions run high, they collapse. Not because of rehearsal, so do performers, soldiers, surgeons. Why not you? When you rehearse chaos before it finds you, you shift from being emotional. But if you've rehearsed, you become calm by choice, made over and over again in your thoughts before the moment arrives. So start small. Each morning ask yourself, what could challenge me today? Who might frustrate me? What could go wrong? And then see yourself responding, not with anger or fear, but with awareness. Breathe into it. Don't run from the scenario. Meet it with your mind. That's your mental gym. That's where resilience is born. It's not the pain that breaks you. It's the fact that you didn't see it coming. The betrayal, the silence, the shift in someone's energy. The moment it hits, your chest tightens, not just from the sting of it, but from the shock. How could they do this? Why now? Where did this come from? That's the real wound. The pain is sharp, yes, but the surprise is what makes it unbearable. You expected something else, that's why it hurts. You assumed loyalty would be returned, that your effort would be seen, that someone would treat you the way you would have treated them. And when they didn't, it shattered not just the moment, but your belief in how things were supposed to go. It wasn't just heartbreak, it was the disruption of your inner world. We don't suffer most from injury, we suffer from disorientation. Aristotle once said, "The aim of the wise is not to secure pleasure, but to avoid pain." But even the wise cannot avoid all pain. What they do avoid is being shocked by it, because they expect it. Not in a cynical way, but in a prepared way. They rehearse the possibility. They leave space for life to be unpredictable, for people to be imperfect. And in that space, they cushion themselves from collapse. The moment you think the world owes you consistency, you've set yourself up to be knocked off center. You might not realize it, but you're carrying expectations around like invisible glass towers. You build them without warning. You stack them on people, on plans, on circumstances. And when life bumps into them, and it always does, they crash. And you call it pain. But it wasn't the bump. It was the blindness. You didn't think it could happen, that they could change, that life could turn left so quickly, and so you crumble. Not because you're weak, but because surprise feels like betrayal. And betrayal, even when unintentional, shakes the foundation. Carl Jung said, "What you resist persists." And we resist acknowledging that people are unpredictable, that outcomes can shift, that tomorrow is not promised. So we cling to how we think things should unfold, and when they don't, we interpret the change as suffering. But what if you stopped expecting smoothness? What if instead you built your internal world with enough flexibility to absorb the impact? That doesn't mean living in fear. It means walking into life with open eyes, seeing things clearly, preparing your mind, not for disaster, but for reality. The Stoics understood this. They practiced premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. They would wake up and ask themselves, who might upset me today? What hardship could I face? Not because they were pessimists, but because they knew that pain is inevitable. But being shocked by it is optional. It's the difference between being hit and being hit off guard. You've felt this before. The moment you were criticized out of nowhere, the breakup you didn't expect, the job you thought was secure that suddenly vanished, the pain itself you could have handled, but the story your mind told, the story that said this isn't how it was supposed to go, that's what broke you. Socrates reminded us, he who is not contented with what he has would not be contented with what he would like to have. That includes emotional expectations. If you demand constant ease, constant praise, constant alignment with your ideals, then you'll live in a state of emotional fragility. Every deviation becomes devastation. But when you begin to expect that pain is part of the journey, not the enemy, but the teacher, you start to move differently. You stop reacting like a victim and start responding like a student. You stop asking, why me? And start asking, what now? The surprise fades, the shock softens, and what remains is clarity. That clarity says, yes, it hurts. But no, I'm not broken. It says, I didn't see this coming, but I was ready anyway. That's a powerful place to live from. It's not about anticipating every event. You can't. Life will always hold surprises, but it is about shifting your relationship to those surprises. Learning not to build your identity around what you expect, but around how you adapt. When someone lets you down, it doesn't shake your foundation because you never built it on them in the first place. When plans fall through, you adjust because you never believed control was your security. When life turns suddenly, you pause because your strength comes from response, not prediction. This mindset won't eliminate pain, but it will eliminate the extra pain, the confusion, the disbelief, the spiraling. It will allow you to feel what's real without being consumed by what's imagined. Plato said, reality is created by the mind. We can change our reality by changing our mind. When you stop believing that life must always align with your hopes and start accepting that it often won't, you stop being thrown every time it doesn't. You become steady. You become ready. And in that readiness, peace begins to grow. So the next time life hits hard, pause, ask yourself, is this pain real, or is this the result of surprise? And if it's the surprise, smile quietly. You just found your edge. Now it's time to round it out. Anger doesn't always shout. Sometimes it simmers. Sometimes it explodes. Sometimes it looks like control, and sometimes it looks like collapse. But almost every time, if you really strip it down, it's not about the principle. It's about the ego. That voice inside that whispers, how dare they? The one that takes things personally, that needs to be right, that equates being challenged with being disrespected. The truth is, anger, especially the kind that owns you, isn't a noble defender of justice. It's usually just pride in a costume. We love to think our anger is justified. We say things like, I'm just standing up for myself, or I won't let anyone treat me that way. But beneath those phrases is often a fragile identity trying to protect itself from being pierced. We confuse ego preservation with personal integrity, but they're not the same. Carl Jung said, Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. That irritation, that quick rise of emotion, it's a flare. Not from the world, but from within. It signals where we've attached our worth to something external, someone's approval, someone's tone, someone's understanding. And when that external thing shifts, our ego scrambles, it panics, it burns, and that fire becomes our reaction. Anger can feel powerful. It can feel clarifying, even addictive, because it gives you something to hold when things feel out of control. It becomes a mask for deeper emotions you don't want to face: shame, insecurity, fear of not being seen. And so instead of asking, "Why does this hurt?" you say, "They shouldn't have done that." The attention shifts outward. The energy turns defensive. The wound hides. Socrates once said, "An unexamined life is not worth living," and an unexamined anger is especially dangerous, because it convinces you that it's noble, that it's honest, that it's who you are. But anger, left unexamined, becomes a tool of the ego. It doesn't ask for truth. It demands dominance. It doesn't seek peace. It seeks validation. We've all felt it, that moment when someone interrupts you and your body tightens, when you're criticized and your pride jumps in to defend, when you're misunderstood and you feel the urge to correct, to shout, to prove. But those reactions don't come from clarity. They come from identity, from the unconscious belief that I must be seen a certain way or I am not enough. Aristotle said, "Anybody can become angry, that is easy. But to be angry with the right person, to the right degree, at the right time, for the right purpose, and in the right way, that is not easy." That kind of anger is rare, because most people don't pause to check the source. They just let it spill, onto loved ones, onto strangers, onto themselves, and then they live in the aftermath: apologies, guilt, distance, regret. But what if you did pause? What if, in that heated moment, instead of speaking from fire, you asked yourself, "What part of me feels threatened right now?" That question softens the edges. It brings light to the ego's grip, and once you see it, you're not held hostage by it anymore. The ego thrives in silence, in your silence. It grows when you don't examine your reactions, when you confuse volume with truth, when you let pride speak louder than presence. But when you bring awareness into the heat, the ego shrinks. Reflection over reaction, you rewrite the script. You become less controlled by pride, more anchored in truth. Most people think power is loud, that it looks like dominance, quick words, sharp comebacks. That if you don't speak up immediately, you've lost the moment. But real power, deep, grounded, unshakable power, often looks like stillness. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you're strong enough to wait, because you've realized that silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. In the space between reaction and response, there's a door. Most people rush right past it. Something gets said, emotions rise, and the mouth opens before the mind catches up. But when you pause, when you say nothing and feel everything, you enter that door. That's where awareness lives. That's where you stop being driven by emotion and start observing it. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life." It. Every moment you decide to wait, to breathe, to feel without responding, you're strengthening a muscle. You're retraining your nervous system. You're becoming a calmer, more powerful version of yourself. One who can weather storms, not because they don't hurt, but because you're no longer swept away by every wave. Plato said, "Wise men speak because they have something to say, fools because they have to say something." The sacred pause gives you time to discover which one you're about to be. And if you wait long enough, if you let the emotion pass through fully, you'll notice something remarkable. What felt like urgency often fades. What felt like injustice often softens. What felt like an emergency often turns out to be just another test of your presence. Saying nothing doesn't mean you do nothing. It means you choose what comes next, rather than letting emotion choose for you. That's real freedom. That's what separates those who are owned by their reactions from those who own their responses. So the next time your emotions rise, pause. Say nothing. Feel everything. Let the moment show you who you really are underneath the impulse. Let it teach you about your patterns, your growth, your inner landscape. Let the silence speak louder than your ego. Because your true power doesn't come from what you say. It comes from what you don't need to say. It's easy to point the finger outward, to say they disrespected you, they triggered you, they made you feel small. The mind does it so quickly, so naturally. Someone rolls their eyes, interrupts you, forgets to include you, and instantly the blame lands outside. But what if the discomfort you feel in those moments doesn't actually come from them? What if the mirror isn't facing outward at all? What if it's turned inward? What if the reflection you're reacting to is your own? It's not them, it's what they awakened in you. Carl Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." That irritation, that tightness in your chest, that heat behind your eyes, it's a flare, not a weapon, not an attack, a flare pointing you toward an unhealed part of yourself. And if you're willing to look, really look, you'll see it's not the other person you're at war with. It's the story you've been telling yourself for years. The story that says you have to be liked to be worthy, that you must always be right to be respected, that if someone doesn't choose you, there must be something wrong with you. These stories live deep, and they sit silently until someone, usually unintentionally, bumps into them. When that happens, it's not their behavior alone that hurts. It's the echo of the wound inside. That's why the same situation can make one person explode and another stay calm. It's not the moment, it's the meaning, the filter, the history underneath. Think about it. You're ignored in a conversation. One part of you brushes it off, another part spirals. Why? Because being ignored might not just feel rude, it might remind you of something older, a moment where you felt invisible as a child, a time when your voice didn't matter. The pain isn't new, it's been waiting, and the other person just held up the mirror. But most people don't pause long enough to see that. They react, they point, they push away the discomfort instead of pulling it closer and asking, "Why does this moment feel so sharp?" The world becomes a minefield full of potential threats, when in truth, the only thing that's being threatened is an idea you've wrapped around your identity. Aristotle said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." But self-knowledge isn't always pleasant. It asks you to stop blaming and start investigating. It requires the courage to say, "It's not just what they did, it's what it touched in me." That shift is hard, but it's the doorway. Because once you take responsibility for your reaction, you regain power. Not power over others, power over yourself. You stop being controlled by every glance, every tone, every offhand comment. You see the trigger, you feel the pain. But now, instead of projecting it outward, you trace it inward, and that tracing leads you somewhere real. You may find an old belief that no longer serves you, or a part of yourself you've been neglecting, or a version of you that still feels 10 years old and unworthy. And suddenly, the moment that looked like rejection becomes an invitation to heal, not just defend. Socrates once said, "The shortest and surest way to live with honor in the world is to be in reality what we would appear to be." And in reality, we are not as calm as we pretend to be, not as healed. outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. But there's another level. Who looks from above understands. Understands that not every moment deserves a reaction. That most people are acting out their own scripts, their own habits, their own fears, and it has very little to do with you. Imagine someone speaks to you with sarcasm. The old reflex is to match it or shut down. But when you're in observer mode, you see it differently. You see their posture, their face, their tone, and instead of making it about you, you wonder what they might be carrying. You're not cold, you're just still. You don't absorb, you observe. You watch their behavior unfold like it's happening in a movie, and you realize you don't have to get pulled into their storm. That's presence. Socrates once said, "He who is not a good servant will not be a good master." And before you can master anything external, relationships, communication, energy, you have to learn to serve your own mind, to step back from it, to notice when it's trying to pull you into a narrative that doesn't serve you. Observer mode isn't avoidance, it's leadership. It's saying, I choose awareness over reactivity. The moment you watch instead of react, you regain your freedom. The tension is still there, but now you're studying it, you're learning from it, and that learning gives you options. You can say less, you can choose silence, you can move your energy instead of matching theirs. It's not about pretending to be unaffected, it's about realizing you don't have to be swept away just because someone else is drowning. Plato said, "The measure of a man is what he does with power." But the greatest power isn't what you say, it's what you withhold. The power to stay centered when someone tries to shake you. The power to let a moment breathe instead of trying to control it. The power to see the game without needing to win it. Most people don't have that power because they've never practiced stepping out of their identity. They've never watched themselves in action. They've never asked, who am I being right now? But the moment you start watching, you start changing. Because you can't improve what you don't observe, and you can't observe if you're always immersed. Start small. The next time you feel yourself getting tight, triggered or anxious, pause. Imagine you're not you. You're just watching a person named you in a scene. You're studying their tone, their thoughts, their posture. You're noticing what's rising inside of them and what they're choosing to do with it. That space you just created, that's the beginning of emotional sovereignty. And the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, the pause gets longer, the clarity gets sharper. You start noticing why you want to say something, where that reaction comes from. You don't judge it, you just see it. And that seeing is liberation. Aristotle said, "It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it." That includes emotional thoughts. Just because you feel it doesn't mean you have to act on it. Just because something stirs in you doesn't mean it needs to be unleashed. Observer mode teaches you how to entertain the emotion without becoming it. This is how you grow without force. You stop chasing control and start cultivating presence. You stop needing everyone to act a certain way so you can feel okay. Instead, you trust your ability to remain grounded because you've trained for it, not with aggression, not with overthinking, but with awareness. And once you've lived from that place, once you've tasted the quiet power of watching instead of reacting, you won't want to go back. You'll start choosing peace, not because you're afraid of conflict, but because you know what it costs to constantly be inside it. When someone disrespects you, it's easy to meet them with sharpness. When someone snaps at you, ignores you, mocks you, it's natural to want to mirror that energy, to give them a taste of their own medicine, to strike back verbally or emotionally, because your pride flares up and demands justice. But what if I told you that the strongest counterpunch isn't anger or revenge, it's compassion? Not the soft, overly sentimental kind, not pity, true compassion. The kind that sees through the surface behavior and asks, what must they be carrying to act this way? It doesn't mean you excuse bad behavior. It doesn't mean you let people walk all over you. It means you refuse to join them in their pain. You see it clearly for what it is, and instead of reacting, you rise above it. Because once you understand that most people's cruelty isn't born from power, but from suffering, you stop seeing enemies and start seeing wounds. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves, but it can also lead us to an understanding of them." That bitterness you see in someone's tone, it probably didn't start with you. That coldness, that arrogance, it's usually a shield. Something they learned to wear a long time ago, maybe when someone hurt them, maybe when they decided never to be vulnerable again. And now it's hardened into their personality. You happened to be there when the wound showed up, but that doesn't mean it's about you. When you see someone lash out, ask yourself, is this strength or is this pain wearing armor? That one question shifts your entire posture. Suddenly you're not reacting, you're observing, and that observation gives you space. In that space, you find your real power, the ability to choose a response that doesn't add fuel to the fire. Plato wrote, "Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle." That includes the person you can't stand, the one who said the thing you can't forget, the one who acted like you didn't matter. They're not exempt. Their pain might look different, their defenses might be sharper, but the struggle is still there. And when you meet pain with more pain, you just multiply it. But when you meet it with clarity, with understanding, with compassion, you interrupt the pattern. You refuse to be pulled into their storm. You stay rooted, and that rattles people more than any insult ever could. Compassion isn't weakness. It takes immense strength to hold back when someone's trying to provoke you, to stay calm when your pride is screaming, to listen when your ego wants to speak, to soften when everything in you wants to harden. That's real power, because it's power over yourself, over your impulses, over the part of you that wants to defend every wound. Socrates said, "The shortest and surest way to live with honor in the world is to be in reality what we would appear to be." We want to appear calm, wise, unshaken. But are we really? Most of the time, no. We're reactive. We want to win. We want to be right. We want to hurt back. But what we really want, deep down, is to feel whole again. To feel that no one, not even the cruelest person, can take us out of ourselves. And that's exactly what compassion protects. It doesn't mean you don't feel hurt. It means you don't become that hurt. You feel it, yes. You acknowledge it. But then you breathe and you ask, what is the most powerful thing I can do here that doesn't cost me my peace? Sometimes that means saying less. Sometimes it means walking away. Sometimes it means responding gently when everything in you wants to be sharp. Not for them, but for you. Because you're not here to play small games. You're not here to let someone else's pain decide who you become in the moment. You're here to master yourself. Aristotle said, "To avoid criticism, say nothing, do nothing, be nothing." But compassion isn't avoidance, it's presence. It's the highest level of emotional skill because it lets you protect your energy without needing to prove your strength. You stop keeping score. You stop needing the last word. You stop making everything personal. You start seeing people for what they carry, not just how they act. That perspective changes everything. It turns the rude stranger into a soul having a rough day, the passive-aggressive co-worker into someone starved for recognition, the person who left you behind into someone who never learned how to stay. It doesn't erase your boundaries, it doesn't remove consequences, but it does remove the poison. And when you remove the poison, your mind clears. You move on faster, you sleep deeper, You don't replay the same argument 100 times. You don't build imaginary speeches in the shower. You're free, not because they changed, but because you did. Compassion is the ultimate counterpunch because it puts you in control of your voice, of your energy, of your narrative. It reminds you that you don't have to be anyone else's reflection. You can be your own light. There's something in you that wants to correct them. You hear the lie, the misunderstanding, the subtle jab, and a part of you tightens. You want to set the record straight. You want to defend your name, your choices, your truth. And it feels like if you don't speak, if you don't respond, you're somehow agreeing, or worse, surrendering. But what if you let them be wrong and let it mean nothing? That's where peace begins. Most of us think that being right equals strength, that when someone misjudges us or twists a story, it's our responsibility to correct it, to stand up and speak our truth at all costs. But often, the cost is much higher than we realize. Our time, our energy, our calm, our sleep. We trade peace for being right, and we never stop to ask if it was even worth it. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. That includes arguing over things that don't need resolution. That includes obsessing over misunderstandings that don't actually impact your life. That includes chasing the illusion that if they just understood, you could finally rest." But peace doesn't come from being understood. It comes from understanding yourself enough to know you don't need to be. We've all had moments where someone misrepresents us, tells the story in a way that puts them in the right and us in the wrong, and immediately the mind starts building a case, gathering receipts, rehearsing speeches. But all of that lives inside the same wound, the belief that our worth depends on their version of the truth. It doesn't. Aristotle said, "It is the mark of an educated mind to entertain a thought without accepting it." The same goes for criticism, for assumptions, for opinions thrown your way that miss the point entirely. You can hear them, even hold them in your mind for a moment, and choose not to accept them. Not because you're afraid of conflict, but because you finally reached a level of inner clarity where not everything deserves a response. Letting someone be wrong about you is not weakness. It's strength in its most silent form. It says, "I know who I am, and I don't need your agreement to feel real." That doesn't mean you never speak up. It means you choose when to speak, based on purpose, not pride. You stop responding to bait. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop begging for fairness in conversations that were never about truth in the first place. Socrates taught that strong minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, weak minds discuss people. When you engage in endless correction and defense, you often get pulled into that last category, discussing people, including yourself, in ways that go nowhere. But when you rise above the need to be right, you enter a quieter place, a clearer place, a higher place. And from there, something remarkable happens. The world becomes lighter. You realize that not everyone needs to like you, that not every story needs correcting, that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nod, say nothing, and keep walking, not out of indifference, but out of discipline, because you know what peace costs, and you're no longer willing to trade it for the illusion of control. Let them think you're arrogant. Let them believe you were wrong. Let them paint you however they need to justify their own narrative. You don't have to carry their version of you into your next chapter. You don't have to waste hours reshaping a story that wasn't even true to begin with. Plato said, "Opinion is the medium between knowledge and ignorance." And most of what people think about you is just that, opinion, filtered through their pain, their projections, their limited view. You don't need to argue with opinion. You just need to live your truth so fully, so freely, that your life becomes the answer. That's the most powerful kind of correction. None at all. Just peace, just presence, just showing up again and again, aligned with your values, regardless of the noise around you. Because if you need them to agree with you in order to feel stable, your peace will always be at risk. One conversation, one post, one sideways look, and you're spiraling again. But if you can let them be wrong and let it mean nothing, you walk through life unshaken, not cold, not detached, just clear. The truth doesn't need to shout. Most people treat every insult like a fastball thrown straight at their chest. They catch it instinctively, grip it tightly, examine it, and then carry it around for the rest of the day, sometimes the rest of their life. But what if you didn't have to catch it at all? What if, when the words came flying, sarcasm, judgment, passive aggression, you simply let them fall? No need to block it, no need to dodge. Just watch it pass by and hit the ground with a quiet thud. Useless, powerless, empty. That's the visualization. Someone says something cruel, sharp, designed to poke at you, and instead of reaching for it, you imagine it floating right past your energy field, untouched. It lands behind you like a dropped pebble. You keep walking. You didn't absorb it. You didn't react. You didn't let it in. You just didn't catch it. This sounds simple, but it takes practice. Because for most of us, insults don't just land on the surface, they pierce. Not because the words are sharp, but because something inside of us believes them, or fears they might be true. That's why they stick. They attach to old wounds, old doubts, and pull you into an emotional spiral. Carl Jung it happens. Over time, insults lose their power. Not because you're numb, but because you're awake. Awake to who you are. Awake to what's real. Awake to the fact that your energy is too valuable to be spent reacting to things that don't even belong to you. That's what this visualization trains you to do. Preserve your peace in real time. You become the mountain that doesn't move when the wind blows. Not because you're stubborn, but because you're grounded. Grounded in the truth that not every word deserves your attention. Not every opinion deserves your engagement. Not every judgment needs to be corrected. Let people be who they are. Let them speak from their pain if they must. But don't catch it. Don't turn their noise into your problem. Let it fall. Most people want to be emotionally strong, but only in theory. They love the idea of being calm, grounded, unbothered. But when the trigger actually shows up, a late reply, a disrespectful tone, someone cutting them off in traffic, all of that imagined strength disappears. And they don't see it, but they're wasting the best opportunities life gives them to train. You don't build emotional strength by avoiding discomfort. You build it by facing small triggers every single day and choosing not to flinch. Think about the body. You don't grow stronger muscles by sitting still. You grow them by doing something that challenges them. Resistance, strain, effort. The process isn't always comfortable, but that discomfort is where growth begins. The same is true for the mind, and even more true for the emotions. Your triggers are your emotional dumbbells. Every time someone irritates you and you don't react, every time you feel that flash of anger or jealousy or fear, and you breathe through it instead of feeding it, you are rewiring your nervous system. You are retraining your emotional reflexes. You are building endurance where there used to be panic, space where there used to be impulse. Carl Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves, but it can also lead to mastery if you choose to work with it. If you choose to treat life as a gym and your emotions as the muscles you're here to strengthen." Most people live in emotional reaction. Something happens, they respond automatically. No pause, no awareness, just a cycle. Trigger, reaction, regret, repeat. And they wonder why they feel drained all the time. It's because they've never trained their emotional body. They're walking through life unconditioned, letting every bump, every tone, every delay knock them out of rhythm. But once you start training with your triggers, everything changes. You stop taking things personally, not because you've become numb, but because you've become precise. You can feel the emotion rise, observe it, and choose what to do with it. That choice, that's strength, that's self-ownership, that's freedom. Let's say someone cuts you off in traffic. That moment, heart jumps, breath tightens, is a rep. Not for your arms, but for your awareness. You can honk, curse, spiral, or you can inhale. If you want to be calm under pressure, then you have to practice calm when things feel pressurized. If you want to be patient, then your daily annoyances are the arena. There's no magical transformation coming. There's only now. Only the choice to train again and again. This kind of training rewires your brain. Your nervous system becomes less reactive. Your breathing deepens. Your default response slows down. And you start to feel something you may not have felt in a long time. Space. Space between stimulus and response. Space to choose something higher than your past patterns. Space to decide who you're becoming moment by moment. And that space, that's your evolution. Most people spend their entire lives avoiding discomfort, dodging triggers, escaping anything that pokes at their wounds. But you're not here for avoidance. You're here to grow. And that means walking toward the tension, not with fear, but with purpose. Let your triggers teach you. Let them expose your edges. Let them show you the parts of yourself still holding on to old beliefs, old insecurities, old reactions. And then, each time you feel that familiar spark of irritation, of pride, of panic, pause. See it as a bell ringing at the start of a new set. Your moment to lift, your moment to choose, your moment to become who you say you are. This is emotional strength, quiet, steady, built in the moments no one sees. Because no one applauds when you pause instead of snapping. No one throws you a parade for staying silent when you could have erupted. But those are the reps that count. Those are the moments that build the emotional body you need to carry everything else. So train with your triggers. Life's not punishing you. It's shaping you. Most people believe in speaking their truth. We're told not to bottle things up, not to let people walk all over us. Express how you feel, they say. Don't let it fester. And yes, there's truth in that, but not the whole truth. Because there's another kind of expression that doesn't liberate you. It leaks from you. It's not healing. It's harm disguised as honesty. That's what happens when you speak from the wound, not the wisdom. From the ache, not the understanding. There's a time to speak. But there's also a time to wait. Not forever. Just long enough to let the sting pass. To let the noise settle. To let the message you're carrying find clarity instead of chaos. Because what we say in pain often sounds nothing like what we mean in peace. Carl Jung said, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people. But you can't know your own darkness while it's still flaring, while it's still hot, while your nervous system is flooded and your ego is screaming for validation, for defense, for revenge. In that state, you're not speaking from your true self, you're speaking from your wound. And wounds don't have good language. They have survival reflexes. They blame, they exaggerate, they speak in ultimatums. They say things that can't be unsaid. That's why silence, at the right time, is not weakness. It's strategy, it's restraint. It's what protects you from saying something that might feel good for a second, but damage everything you've built for years. That pause, that moment where you want to say everything but choose not to, is where your real strength is tested. Because it's not hard to speak when one unexpected delay, and suddenly they're not thinking clearly anymore. They're gripped by anger, flooded with fear, drowning in shame. The emotion becomes the lens. It distorts everything, and they forget the most important truth in that moment. You are not the emotion. You're the one watching it. That difference between being the feeling and observing it is the line between chaos and clarity, between being dragged around by every thought and standing still in the middle of the storm. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Emotions are part of that unconscious current. They rise without warning, surge through your system, and unless you've practiced awareness, they use you. You become their puppet, your voice, your posture, your choices, driven not by wisdom, but by whatever raw feeling took over your system. But feelings are not facts. They're visitors. They show up, they speak, they leave. And if you can learn to pause, even for a breath, you create space between you and the feeling. In that space, you reclaim your role. You remember that you are not anger. You are not fear. You are not the ego screaming to defend itself. You are the observer, the one behind the thoughts, the one who can choose not to react. Socrates said, "Know thyself." But how can you know yourself if you're constantly merged with whatever mood is present? Self-knowledge begins with separation, with stepping back, not to disconnect, but to see. To notice the story your emotion is telling without blindly believing it. Let's say anger rises. It feels urgent. It tells you that someone crossed a line. It demands action, now. But if you wait just a few seconds, if you don't move, don't speak, don't lash out, you begin to notice the anger isn't you. It's just energy, a defense mechanism, a flare from some part of you that felt threatened. And when you don't obey it immediately, it loses power. You feel it, but it doesn't control you. Fear works the same way. It creeps in with whispers of what might go wrong. It tightens your chest, speeds up your breath, fills your head with disaster. But even fear, when observed, weakens. The act of naming it, there's fear, pulls you into presence. You become the watcher, and the watcher is always calm. Because the watcher knows that no emotion lasts, that all feelings like clouds pass through the sky of your awareness. And you're not the cloud, you're the sky. Aristotle said, anyone can become angry. That is easy. But to be angry with the right person, to the right degree, at the right time, that is not easy. What makes it possible is disidentification. That's the superpower. To be able to say, I feel anger rising, but I am not that anger. That shift gives you choice. And choice is what transforms reaction into response. You stop being pulled around like a puppet. You start guiding your behavior with intention. This doesn't mean you suppress how you feel. You don't deny the emotion. You welcome it. You feel it deeply, but you don't become it. You don't build your identity on it. You let it flow through, not root in. Think of it like a fire alarm going off. The emotion is the alarm, loud, urgent, impossible to ignore. But you don't grab a hammer and start smashing things. You investigate. You look for the source. Is there a real fire or just some smoke? That's how you begin treating emotions, with curiosity instead of compliance. Every time you choose to observe instead of react, you get stronger, more centered, more free. You stop walking through life as a slave to your moods. You become consistent, steady. People feel the difference in your energy. You're not so easily rattled, not so easily provoked. Not because you don't feel, but because you don't let feelings define you. Plato wrote, "The first and best victory is to conquer self." And you conquer self not by force, but by awareness. By noticing the exact moment when emotion wants to take the wheel, and calmly, quietly choosing to keep your hands on it instead. This is not easy work. It takes practice, patience, discipline. But with each moment of disidentification, you get closer to emotional sovereignty, the state where you no longer need the world to be perfect for you to be okay. Because now, your peace doesn't depend on external harmony, it depends on inner separation between you and the storm. You are not the anger, you are not the fear. You are not the ego shouting for control. You are the one watching it all unfold, with quiet power and the ability to decide what comes next. The world won't go quiet just because you found your peace. People will still cut you off mid-sentence. They'll still talk behind your back, misread your intentions, fail to apologize, choose ego over honesty. Life will still throw things you didn't plan, late nights, early calls, broken trust, sudden losses. The noise won't stop, the chaos won't dissolve, but if you've mastered what we've been building toward, you won't shake. Because the point was never to change the world. The point was to change how you move through it. Most people live in a constant state of emotional turbulence, bouncing between triggers like a pinball. They believe they need the world to be different, kinder, quieter, more predictable, for them to feel okay. So they try to manage everything outside themselves, clinging to people who agree, avoiding situations that might sting, chasing control like it's the only way to stay afloat. But what if you didn't need to control the waves? What if you just learned how to stand still inside them? Carl Jung said, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." And in this frame, the final one, you become untouchable, not because nothing touches you, but because it no longer owns you. You don't become the noise. You don't match every mood in the room. You don't swing wildly from high to low based on someone else's words. You stay centered, quiet inside. That's the power of all the inner work, of watching, detaching, disidentifying. You begin to live not as a reactor, but as a responder. And the difference is everything. Reacting is fast, defensive, emotional. It's driven by fear or pride or unexamined pain. Responding is slow, deliberate, conscious. It comes from presence, not panic. And once you live from response, the world starts to look different. Not because it changed, but because you did. The same insult that used to burn now sounds like static. The same rejection that once collapsed, you now feels like redirection. You lose the urge to prove yourself. You no longer need to win arguments or control outcomes. You don't need the apology to find closure. You don't need everyone to understand. That's emotional freedom. Socrates said, "To find yourself, think for yourself. And to think for yourself, you first have to see yourself. Separate from the waves of emotion, the noise of ego, the storms that others live inside. Because when you know who you are, no one else can tell you who you're not." And here's the part no one tells you. When you master this, you still feel Have you ever stopped to wonder what if everything they call love is nothing more than fear of being alone? What if the need to have someone is simply a disguise to avoid facing the emptiness within yourself? And what if what you call a relationship is just another way to run away from you? Nothing is closer to the truth than the discomfort we feel in solitude. The Stoics urged us to imagine being on our deathbed, the room silent, the air heavy, the weight of your life pressing in, and to ask, did you live your own life, or did you merely exist in the shadow of someone else's? The Stoics also warned us against surrendering our inner freedom, reminding us that the chains we accept willingly are the hardest to break. We dress those chains in romance, in companionship, in the illusion of completion, but deep down, something burns, something tears at you, whispering that you were meant for more. If you've ever felt that whisper, if you've sensed that truth hiding beneath the surface of your relationships, then you already know this conversation is for you. And if you seek the courage to face yourself without masks, to build a life rooted in your own strength and sovereignty, consider subscribing for the version of you who refuses to abandon their own soul. Most people don't fall in love because they've reached a place of wholeness. They fall because they're terrified of the silence that waits for them when the noise stops. The kind of silence that forces you to hear your own thoughts, to confront the questions you've been avoiding for years. There's an empty space in their life, a space that feels too wide, too echoing, too raw, so they fill it with another person. Not always because they deeply want that person, but because it's easier than facing themselves. We rarely talk about how much of what we call love is simply a beautifully dressed form of avoidance. It's easier to get lost in someone else's stories, emotions, and needs than to confront our own. Carl Jung once wrote, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." And for many, a relationship isn't a bridge to true connection. It's a shield from that loneliness, a way to pretend they are understood, even when they've never truly understood themselves. The problem is, when love is rooted in fear, it becomes fragile. Every disagreement feels like a threat, every moment of distance like a crack in the glass. The relationship starts to carry the impossible task of holding together not just two lives, but also the unresolved parts of each person. And when those cracks begin to show, panic sets in. People cling harder, negotiate away their own values, silence their desires, and bend themselves into shapes that don't quite fit, just to keep the other person from walking away. It's not love at that point. It's a survival tactic. It's a way to keep from being left alone with the very silence they've been running from. In love, the opposite often happens. We seek to be validated, accepted, approved, and in the process, we trade away the raw honesty that could actually help us grow. This is why so many lose themselves in relationships without even realizing it. The process is subtle, almost invisible at first. You compromise on small things, where to eat, what to watch, how you spend the weekend. It feels harmless. It feels like partnership. But then the compromises grow. You hold back parts of yourself because you know they won't understand. You stop pursuing certain dreams because they create tension. You start adjusting your personality, not because you want to, but because you're afraid that being your full self might cost you the relationship. Over time, the person you were becomes harder to recognize, even to yourself. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." And that's the quiet tragedy. So many people stop truly living once they're afraid of losing someone. When the foundation of love is fear, it keeps you from the very thing love is supposed to bring, freedom. A healthy love should allow you to stand taller, not shrink smaller. It should strengthen your individuality, not erase it. But when fear is in control, love becomes a contract of unspoken conditions. Don't be too much. Don't change too fast. Don't disturb the balance, even if that balance is quietly suffocating you. People convince themselves that this is normal, that this is the price of being with someone. But what they don't realize is that this price is far higher than they think. They're paying with their authenticity, their creativity, their growth. And all of it is traded for the comfort of not facing themselves. The irony is, the silence they're running from is not their enemy, it's their teacher. In solitude, the noise fades, and you begin to hear your real voice again. At first, it's uncomfortable. You hear doubts, fears, regrets. But if you stay with it long enough, you also hear your values, your calling, your truth. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." You cannot do that if you're always drowning in someone else's presence, if your every thought is shaped to keep the peace rather than to find your own center. The fear behind love is rarely about losing another person. More often, it's about losing the distraction they provide. When you remove that distraction, you're left with yourself. And for many, that's the scariest encounter of all. But this is the encounter that changes everything, because once you can sit in your own silence without needing to escape it, you stop depending on others to make you feel whole. You stop negotiating away your identity for the sake of belonging. You begin to love by choice, not by necessity, and that is the kind of love that cannot be broken by absence or distance, because it's not built on fear, it's built on freedom. Choosing to face the silence is not easy. It takes courage to stop reaching for someone just to avoid yourself. But that courage is the foundation of a life where love becomes a gift, not a crutch. Where being with someone is a deliberate decision, not an unconscious escape. Where you can walk away from what doesn't serve you, not because you don't care, but because you care too much about not abandoning yourself. The fear behind love will keep you running in circles. Facing it will set you free. And freedom, as the Stoics taught, is the only possession no one can take from you. From the moment we're old enough to understand words, the story begins. It comes in bedtime tales, in movies, in the way adults speak about life. You grow up, you meet someone, you fall in love, and you settle down. It's painted as the ultimate destination, the final chapter where all loose ends are tied and the credits roll over a happy ending. Few ever stop to ask what happens after that scene fades to black, and fewer still question whether this script serves everyone, or whether it silently robs us of the chance to meet the most important person we'll ever know, ourselves. This conditioning doesn't arrive like a command. It's softer, more insidious. It lives in casual questions from relatives. When are you going to meet someone? As if your life is a waiting room for love. It hides in compliments that compare your worth to your relationship status. By the time we're adults, the message is no longer questioned. It's absorbed, unquestioned, like gravity. The effect of this quiet programming is profound. Without even realizing it, many people grow into adults who believe that life without a partner is incomplete by definition. They may travel, learn, build careers, but somewhere in the back of their mind there's a constant, unspoken reminder that all of it is just filler until they find someone. And so they enter relationships not out of readiness or genuine self-knowledge, but out of a sense of duty to the story they were handed. Carl Jung once wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." For many, a relationship becomes a way to avoid that terrifying work. If someone else validates us, we don't have to fully validate ourselves. If someone else mirrors back our value, we don't have to face the silence that asks us to define it for ourselves. This invisible conditioning shapes not only who we choose, but how we behave once we've chosen. If you've been taught that your worth is tied to being partnered, You will often endure situations that harm you just to avoid returning to the dreaded state of being single. You will ignore red flags, tolerate disrespect, or contort yourself into someone else's ideal rather than risk the shame of ending up alone. Marcus Aurelius once observed, "It is not the things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them." The judgment here is subtle but crushing. Alone equals failure, together equals success. It is this false equation that keeps countless people trapped in lives that do not reflect who they truly are. It's worth noticing that this script doesn't account for individuality. It's one size fits all, yet sold as universal truth. Some people flourish in deep, committed partnerships. Others need long stretches of solitude to truly grow. But the conditioning rarely leaves room for the second option. Solitude is reframed as loneliness, and loneliness is presented as a problem that must be solved quickly. This pressure doesn't just come from others, it begins to live inside you. Even when no one is watching, you might feel restless in your own company, as if you're wasting time by not moving toward that prescribed ending. Over time, this restlessness becomes the background music of your life. You learn to measure your progress, not by how well you've come to know yourself, but by how close you are to fulfilling the cultural blueprint. The danger of living by this blueprint is that it discourages deep self-exploration. If the goal is already set, why bother wandering off the path? Why question whether the destination fits who you've become? The conditioning tells you that discovering yourself is secondary to finding someone else, and in doing so, it subtly invites you to abandon parts of yourself that don't fit neatly into a relationship narrative. You might suppress ambitions, interests, or unconventional ideas because they could make it harder to fit the mold. In this way, the story doesn't just shape your relationships, it shapes your identity. Jung often spoke of individuation, the process of becoming your true self, as the central task of life. This journey demands time, space, and a willingness to stand apart from the crowd. But the invisible conditioning tells you the opposite, that you must merge, pair off, and bind your life to another's as soon as possible. And here lies the tension. Individuation asks you to turn inward, while the script demands you look outward. Without realizing it, you may spend decades living in the tension between these two forces, pulled away from your own becoming by the gravitational pull of expectation. It's not that love or companionship is wrong. The issue is when it becomes compulsory, when it's sought reflexively, without considering whether you're ready or whether the person you're becoming is even compatible with the role you've been taught to play. Relationships entered under the weight of conditioning often become mirrors of that conditioning, safe, familiar, but unchallenging. You may find comfort, but you won't find the full truth of yourself. And the tragedy is that by the time you notice, years may have passed, and the person you could have been feels distant, almost unreachable. The first step in loosening the grip of this conditioning is awareness. To see the story for what it is, a story, not an absolute law, changes everything. When you realize you're free to write your own script, the urgency to find someone fades. You begin to see the space of being single not as an absence, but as a rare opportunity. An open field where you can plant ideas, dreams, and parts of yourself that would never survive in the cramped soil of living solely for someone else's approval. The Stoics would call this living in accordance with nature, aligning your life with your own nature, not the artificial narratives handed down to you. Breaking free from the invisible conditioning doesn't mean rejecting love forever. It means refusing to let the fear of being alone dictate the course of your life. It means choosing to know yourself deeply before you choose to share yourself. Because when you finally meet someone from a place of wholeness, you won't be seeking them to fill a void. You'll be inviting them to walk beside you on a path you've already made your own. And that is the kind of connection that no conditioning can manufacture, because it's born from freedom, not from fear. It doesn't happen in a single moment you can point to. It's not as if one day you wake up and everything is different. No, it's slower than that. So slow you can convince yourself nothing is really changing. It starts with a tiny compromise. You skip something you wanted to do because it doesn't fit the plan. You soften your opinion in a conversation to avoid a little friction. You tell yourself it's not worth the argument, that this is what maturity looks like, that love means meeting in the middle. And at first it feels harmless, even noble. But over time, those small concessions begin to stack up, and the person you were starts to fade, not because anyone demanded it outright, but because you offered it piece by piece without noticing the cost. The shift is so subtle you barely feel it happening. You adapt to make things smoother, to keep the peace, to protect the bond you think you can't live without. And while compromise is part of any connection, there's a difference between adapting and erasing. When you start filtering your thoughts before you even speak them, when you swallow desires because they might cause discomfort, you begin to trade authenticity for security. The Stoics warned against this kind of bargain. Seneca wrote, "He who is brave is free." True freedom, in this sense, means out the back door. One of the reasons this disappearance is hard to detect is because it often gets framed as growth. You tell yourself you're becoming less selfish, more understanding, more flexible, and sometimes you are. But there's a line between growing and shrinking, and when the line blurs, you may not realize which side you're on until it's far behind you. You begin to notice little things. You laugh less the way you used to. You pursue fewer of the interests that once made you feel alive. You hesitate before expressing what's truly on your mind. In isolation, none of these seem alarming, but together they create a quiet erosion of self, a version of you that has been carefully sanded down to fit the shape of someone else's comfort. What makes this erosion dangerous is that it's self-inflicted. Rarely does someone explicitly ask you to disappear. Instead, you do it in the hope of keeping the connection. It's the unspoken belief that love is maintained by removing your sharp edges, by becoming easier to live with, by being agreeable even when it costs you something essential. Over months or years, the person staring back at you in the mirror feels familiar but strangely distant. You recognize the outline, but the inner fire, the specific combination of thoughts, desires, and expressions that made you who you are, has dimmed. This slow disappearance doesn't only happen in romantic relationships. It can take place in friendships, families, even workplaces. Anywhere the subtle pressure to belong outweighs the courage to stand as yourself, the erosion begins. And because the change is gradual, it often feels like the natural way things are supposed to be. You tell yourself that everyone compromises, that maybe this is just the cost of connection. But deep down, a quiet restlessness stirs. It's the part of you that remembers a time when you felt fully alive in your own skin, unedited and unapologetic. The painful truth is that disappearing in this way doesn't strengthen the bond, it weakens it. Relationships built on partial truths and filtered selves create a fragile foundation. You may keep the peace on the surface, but underneath, resentment begins to grow, and the connection becomes less about genuine closeness and more about maintaining an image. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. If your thoughts are constantly tailored to avoid conflict, then your soul slowly adopts the muted tones of avoidance, losing the vibrant colors that made you unique. Reclaiming yourself from this disappearance isn't about swinging to the other extreme and refusing compromise altogether. It's about remembering that the truest form of love, whether romantic, platonic, or even self-love, thrives when both people stand whole, It's about recognizing that you can be kind without erasing your boundaries, that you can be loving without silencing your truth. The courage to be fully yourself will sometimes create tension, but tension is not the enemy. As the Stoics understood, the tests we face are the training ground for strength. A relationship that cannot withstand your authenticity is not one that can truly hold you. The slow disappearance is seductive because it feels safe. But that safety is an illusion if it comes at the expense of your own life force. You are not meant to be a softened, palatable version of yourself just to preserve an idea of love. Love that demands your absence is not love. It's a contract for slow self-abandonment. And when you finally see this, you begin to understand that the greatest gift you can give any relationship is the fullness of who you are, unshaped by fear and uncut by compromise. Because the moment you stop disappearing, you stop trading your life for someone else's comfort, and you start living it as it was meant to be lived, whole, present, and unmistakably yours. Belonging is one of the deepest human desires. We are wired to seek it, to feel anchored in a place, a group, or a person. There is comfort in knowing you have somewhere to return to, someone who will call you theirs, a life that feels shared rather than solitary. But what we rarely acknowledge is the quiet toll this belonging can take when it's not grounded in true freedom. The cost is rarely demanded outright. Instead, it shows up as a constant, almost invisible negotiation of your thoughts, your desires, your very essence. You learn over time which parts of yourself are welcome and which should be hidden away. And the more you trade away those parts, the safer you seem to feel, even as something essential in you begins to fade. The safety of belonging often comes wrapped in rules. Some are spoken, most are not. You discover that certain opinions are better left unsaid because they disturb the peace. Certain ambitions should be toned down because they threaten the balance. Even emotions, raw and unfiltered, are carefully measured so they don't make others uncomfortable. Slowly, you start to live in a kind of emotional and mental middle ground, never too much, never too little, always adjusted to fit the space you occupy. Epictetus warned, if you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. But belonging often makes us unwilling to be misunderstood. We choose smoothness over honesty, acceptance over self-expression, and that choice, repeated often enough, reshapes us. What makes this cost so subtle is that it often feels like love. You tell yourself you're compromising because you care, because you're a good partner, friend, or family member, and sometimes that's true. But the line between healthy compromise and self-erasure is thin, and belonging has a way of pushing you toward the latter without you noticing. One day you realize you're no longer saying what you think unless it's safe. You've stopped chasing certain dreams because they don't align with the shared plan. You've become careful, measured, less spontaneous, not because you wanted to change, but because change threatened the approval you had worked so hard to secure. The cost of belonging isn't always paid in dramatic moments of betrayal or loss. More often it's paid in small, almost invisible installments. The joke you didn't make because you weren't sure how it would land. The truth you didn't speak because it might cause conflict. The risk you didn't take because it would require explaining yourself to someone who wouldn't understand. Each of these seems minor in isolation, but together they form a pattern. Over time, you begin to live not for your own clarity or authenticity, but for the stability of the group or the relationship. You trade pieces of your individuality for a sense of security, believing that the more you give, the more you'll belong. If your thoughts are constantly adjusted to match the expectations of others, your soul will inevitably lose its own distinct color. Staying single, or even just choosing solitude when needed, means you keep ownership of your thoughts, desires, and essence without the constant background negotiation. It's not about isolation, it's about sovereignty. It's about knowing that every decision you make comes from your own center, not from a calculation about how it will be received. This isn't to say that connection is inherently dangerous. Love, friendship, and community can be powerful sources of growth and joy, but they only serve you if they allow your full presence. When belonging requires constant self-editing, it's not connection, it's a subtle form of control. And control, no matter how softly applied, limits your capacity to live as yourself. Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming whole, cannot happen when your sense of self is dependent on the approval of others. You cannot integrate the parts of you that are hidden away to maintain belonging. To choose yourself over the comfort of belonging is not easy. It can mean standing apart from the group, breaking unspoken rules, or letting go of relationships that cannot hold your truth. It can mean moments of loneliness that feel sharper than you expected. But it also means living without the weight of constant adjustment, without the slow erosion of your voice and vision. And in that freedom, something remarkable happens. You begin to belong to yourself in a way no one can take away. The cost of belonging is real, but so is the reward of keeping your own life in your own hands. Staying single doesn't mean you reject love or connection. It means you refuse to trade your essence for them. It means that when you do choose to belong somewhere, it will be on your terms, as your whole self, without shrinking to fit. Because belonging is sweetest when it doesn't come at the expense of who you are. And freedom, once claimed, makes every other kind of connection richer, deeper, and truer. When you strip away the constant hum of other people's voices, something unexpected rises in its place. At first, it's unsettling, the kind of quiet that feels almost too loud. You notice thoughts you didn't realize were there, ideas that had been buried under conversations, obligations, and the steady pull of someone else's presence. Alone, there's no one to distract you from them. They surface with an intensity that can feel overwhelming, like a room you've avoided cleaning for years suddenly lit by a harsh, revealing light. Carl Jung once wrote, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." Solitude forces that awakening. It asks you to turn inward, to look directly at what you've been avoiding. And while it can feel like discomfort at first, there's something else buried in it: clarity. As the days or weeks pass, that clarity deepens. You begin to hear your own voice with more precision, without constant negotiation of your thoughts to fit someone else's expectations. Your ideas stretch further, bolder. You start following your mind down paths you might have dismissed before because they didn't align with the shared plan or the comfort of the group. The world inside you begins to expand, filling with details and connections you couldn't see when you were too busy adapting to someone else's rhythm. This is the part people rarely talk about when they speak of being alone, the way your mind sharpens when there's nothing to dilute it. At first, solitude can feel like a kind of loss, especially if you've been conditioned to see it as absence. No partner to share your day with, no one to consult before making decisions, no immediate echo of your words. But as you lean into it, you realize that absence has been misunderstood all along. What you've actually been given is space, pure, unclaimed, unmeasured space. And space has a way of revealing the truth. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." In solitude, that truth becomes undeniable. You stop outsourcing your validation, your direction, your worth. They start coming from the inside out, and the power in that shift is hard to describe until you've felt it. The more time you spend in this space, the more it changes you. At first, you fill the silence with noise, music, screens, conversations with anyone who will listen. But slowly, you start letting the silence be. You discover that not all thoughts need to be drowned out, that some of the discomfort you feel in stillness is simply the process of meeting yourself again. It's in that stillness that desires become sharper. You realize which dreams are truly yours and which were inherited from someone else's vision for your life. You feel the pull toward things you had long forgotten mattered to you. This is when solitude begins to shift from uncomfortable to addictive, not because you want to avoid people, but because you've tasted the freedom of living without constant compromise. There's a peculiar kind of energy that comes from being alone on your own terms. It's not the isolation born of rejection or loss. It's chosen, deliberate, and rooted in self-respect. The Stoics would see this as aligning with nature, living according to your own inner compass. You start to notice how much of your life before was built around reacting to someone else's mood, their needs, their plans. Now, your energy is directed toward creation. You're not managing another's emotions before you can explore your own. You're not tempering your excitement or holding back an idea because it might be misunderstood. In this space, time feels different. There's a stretch to it, an openness that allows for deeper work and deeper thought, until it's fully formed without being interrupted by the constant need to check in with someone else. You can start something at midnight because you feel inspired, or stop in the middle of a project to follow a new thought without having to explain yourself. It's in these moments that you realize how much energy you've spent before on simply maintaining the balance of shared life. That energy is now yours to invest where it matters most. Of course, solitude isn't a constant stream of inspiration. There are days when the quiet feels heavy, when you wish for the ease of someone else's presence. But even in those moments, you begin to understand the weight has meaning. It's shaping you, building your capacity to stand on your own, to sit with your own mind without running from it. Eventually, the space solitude creates stops feeling like a void and starts feeling like home. You realize that the truest connections you'll ever have, with others, with the world, with your own work, are richer when they grow from this foundation. You no longer fear being alone because you've seen what can be built there. And once you've experienced the sharpness of thought, the clarity of vision, and the unfiltered pull of your own desires, you'll protect that space fiercely. Not as a wall against the world, but as the ground on which you stand, steady and unshakable. Because when you belong fully to yourself, no connection can take that away, and no absence can strip you of it. From the earliest stories we're told, there's a common thread, a promise that somewhere out there exists another person who will complete us. It's in fairy tales, in songs, in movies. You're not whole until you find your other half. At first, this idea feels romantic, even comforting. It suggests that life's deepest fulfillment comes not from within, but from merging with another. But beneath that comforting surface is a subtle, dangerous belief that on your own, you are incomplete. And when you accept that belief, you begin to live as though your worth and stability depend on someone else. This myth has a quiet way of shaping your decisions. If you think you are incomplete, then every action is weighed against the hope of attracting or keeping another person. Your choices begin to orbit around the possibility of being chosen, of being enough for someone else. You might adjust your ambitions so they don't threaten the relationship, or downplay parts of your personality that don't fit the image of a perfect partner. Over time, your identity becomes less about what feels true to you and more about what will secure connection. This isn't love, it's dependence disguised as devotion. And dependence, no matter how pretty the packaging, slowly erodes individuality. Dependence is seductive because it offers a false sense of security. It tells you that as long as the relationship remains, you're safe. But that safety comes at a cost. you start to measure yourself not by your own standards, but by how well you fit into someone else's life. You ignore the quiet signals from within, the dissatisfaction, the suppressed curiosity, the unspoken dreams, because chasing them might disrupt the bond. Epictetus wrote, "If you want to be free, then wish for nothing that depends on others." Freedom doesn't grow in the soil of dependence. Instead, it shrinks there, until one day you realize you've built your life on ground that can disappear at any moment. When you buy into the myth of incompleteness, relationships stop being choices and start being lifelines. The thought of losing the other person isn't just about emotional pain. It feels like losing a part of yourself. That's why people stay in situations that no longer nourish them, why they silence their instincts and ignore their needs. They believe leaving would mean becoming less than whole. But the truth is, you were never half of a whole. You were always an entire person, capable of love, creation, and purpose without needing to fuse yourself to another. The wholeness you seek from someone else can only ever be built from within. It's worth asking, where did this belief come from? In part, it's cultural. Societies often idealize the couple, the family unit, as the highest form of personal achievement. Single life is framed as a waiting room, a temporary state you should aim to escape. Even language reflects this bias. Terms like settling down suggest that only in partnership can life find its true form. But this narrative leaves out the reality that partnership is not a guarantee of fulfillment, and singleness is not a sentence of lack. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself." The myth of incompleteness hides this truth, keeping people searching outward when the real work is inward. Breaking free from this myth doesn't mean rejecting relationships altogether. It means approaching them from a place of self-sufficiency rather than need. When you no longer see yourself as a fragment waiting to be completed, love becomes a choice, not a dependency. You can give without fear of losing yourself, and you can receive without making it your source of identity. This kind of love is richer, deeper, because it's built between two whole people who can stand alone if needed. Jung understood this dynamic well. He believed that true connection could only occur when both individuals had confronted their own inner world, rather than using each other to avoid it. The challenge is that choosing wholeness can feel lonely at first. Without the immediate validation of a relationship, you have to face yourself in full, your flaws, your strengths, your unrealized potential. That's the work most avoid, which is why dependence can be so tempting. But once you start to build a life that feels complete on its own terms, something changes. The fear of being alone starts to fade. Your self-worth stops swinging with the moods or opinions of others who aren't built to fill a void, they're built to share abundance. The myth of incompleteness is powerful because it's been repeated so often it feels like truth. But the real truth is simpler and far more liberating. You are not half of anything. You are a whole, complex, capable being. The more you live from that place, the less you'll tolerate connections that require you to shrink. You'll stop treating love as an antidote to your existence and start seeing it as a complement to it. And in that shift, dependence loses its hold, individuality returns to its rightful place, and your life stops being a search for the missing piece and starts being the creation of something complete, entirely on your own terms. Society has a way of making its preferences clear without ever saying them outright. You see it in how people react to certain milestones, buying a house, getting married, having children. These are celebrated as markers of success, proof that you're on the right path. They make you predictable, and predictability is comforting to the collective. When you're part of a couple, people think they know what comes next. Your life has a familiar shape. It's easier to understand, easier to categorize, easier to control. But step outside of that pattern, live fully and unapologetically single, and suddenly you become harder to define. Your next move isn't obvious. You don't fit neatly into the expected script. And that unpredictability makes people uneasy because it signals freedom, the kind that can't be managed. The herd thrives on stability. It wants to know what to expect from you, and in return, it offers the safety of acceptance. But that acceptance comes with an unspoken agreement. Don't stray too far from the path. When you're coupled, the path is almost pre-written, shared plans, mutual compromises, a rhythm that keeps you in step with the majority. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that rhythm unless it drowns out the beat of your own drum. The thriving single person doesn't just hear their own rhythm, they live by it. They make choices that don't require consensus. They move in ways that can't be easily predicted. And in a world built on conformity, that is a kind of power that both fascinates and threatens. The reason unpredictability is so powerful is because it's rooted in autonomy. If no one can predict your next step, it means no one else is setting your direction. You're not following a script, you're writing your own. The herd may see this as instability, but for the outlier, it's freedom. Without the constant need to negotiate decisions with a partner, you can pivot when inspiration strikes. You can take risks without having to justify them. You can chase opportunities that don't make sense to anyone but you. And that ability to act without delay, without compromise, is a rare currency. Of course, the herd doesn't just ignore the outlier, it often tries to pull them back in. Questions come disguised as concern. Don't you want someone to share your life with? Aren't you afraid of ending up alone? Beneath these questions is an assumption that a life outside the couple framework is less valuable, less complete. But these are the questions of people who measure life by how well it mirrors the majority. They can't see that solitude, when chosen, is not a lack, it's a luxury. It's a wide open space where self-determination can flourish without interruption. The outlier knows this, and that knowledge becomes a shield against the subtle pressure to conform. What unsettles people most about the thriving single person is not their solitude, it's their contentment within it. If you're alone and miserable, the herd feels validated. It proves their path is the better one. But when you're alone and thriving, you disrupt the narrative. You show that happiness and fulfillment aren't exclusive to the couple's lane, and that makes others question the compromises they've made. Jung understood this discomfort, noting that the most intense conflicts, if overcome, leave behind a sense of security and calm that is not easily disturbed. The thriving single person has faced the conflict of societal expectation head-on, and in overcoming it, they've found a calm the herd can't quite replicate. Unpredictability also breeds resilience. When you're not dependent on another person to define your identity, you're less shaken by change. The herd fears disruption because it throws their carefully constructed stability into question. But the outlier moves through change fluidly. They're used to navigating without a preset map. They know that life can shift in an instant, and they've built themselves to adapt. This adaptability is another form of power, one that allows them to seize opportunities and weather challenges without losing their sense of self. In the end, the difference between the herd and the outlier isn't about relationships, it's about agency. The herd follows patterns laid out by others, finding safety in numbers. The outlier takes the risk of stepping off the path, knowing that the terrain may be unpredictable, but also knowing that it is theirs to explore. And in claiming that risk, they gain something the herd often sacrifices, the right to live entirely on their own terms. The thriving single person understands that unpredictability is not chaos, it's potential. It's the openness to be shaped by choice, rather than by default. They're not rejecting connection. They're rejecting the idea that connection must come at the cost of individuality. And in a world that constantly rewards predictability, the outlier's refusal to be easily defined is both a rebellion and a declaration. I belong to myself first. That kind of self-possession can't be given, and it certainly can't be taken. It's built, earned, and protected, and once you have it, you realize it's the rarest kind of power there is. The greatest ideas rarely arrive when you're surrounded by noise. They don't tend to grow in rooms filled with chatter, constant movement, and the weight of other people's expectations. They emerge in the still hours, when the world feels far away and there's no one pulling at your attention. There's a certain electricity in those moments. The long nights when you're lost in thought, the quiet mornings when you wake without obligation. In solitude, your mind roams without needing permission. It wanders into strange territory, stumbles onto connections it wouldn't have made under the gaze of an audience. Carl Jung once said, "Solitude is for me a fount of healing which makes my life worth living." What he understood is that creation isn't just about inspiration, it's about space. Without that space, the raw material of thought doesn't have room to take shape. When you're alone, you can chase an idea without having to justify why it matters. You can follow a thought into the depths of obsession without having to explain yourself to someone else's logic. You can let it consume you for hours, days, even weeks, and there's no one to tell you to slow down or step back. That freedom, to sink fully into your own process, is a rare gift in a world obsessed with constant connection. It's in that freedom that the creative edge sharpens. Without compromise, without the subtle pressure to adjust your pace for another person, your mind learns to stretch in ways that can't happen in the crowd. Crowded spaces, whether physical or emotional, tend to pull your attention outward. You're aware of others, aware of how your actions might be interpreted, aware of what's expected of you. That awareness can be useful in collaboration, but it's poison to certain kinds of thought, the kind that needs to be unruly, unmeasured, and untouched by outside influence. Solitude removes the need for approval. You're no longer creating to be seen a certain way. You're creating because something within you demands to be brought into existence. Seneca noted, "We must take a break from the world and withdraw into ourselves." It's not withdrawal out of avoidance. It's withdrawal as an act of preservation, to protect the fragile beginnings of an idea until it's strong enough to face the world. The absence of expectation is what makes solitude such fertile ground for creation. When no one is waiting on you to produce a certain kind of work, you're free to explore the strange, the impractical, even the absurd. And it's often in those directions that the most original ideas live. You can write something that may never be published, sketch something no one will see, experiment without fear of failing in public. In this way, solitude acts as a laboratory for your imagination, where mistakes are not only allowed but necessary. Without the constant lens of someone else's opinion, you can take risks that would otherwise feel too exposed. There's also a rhythm to solitude that nurtures creativity. Without the interruptions that come from shared life, you can enter what psychologists call flow more easily, a state where time disappears, and you're so absorbed in the work that nothing else exists. You don't have to stop mid-thought to respond to a message or explain why you're still at your desk. The momentum builds, carrying you deeper into the process, and sometimes what emerges from that state is something you could never have forced through will alone. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul. And in that uninterrupted space, your best work often finds you." The creative edge of being alone isn't just about producing more, it's about producing work that feels truer. In the absence of others, you stop mimicking. You stop unconsciously shaping your ideas to match what's popular or what will be praised. You stop editing before you've even begun. What comes out is raw, unfiltered, and entirely yours. Even if it's imperfect, it carries your signature in a way that work made under constant influence never can. That authenticity is worth more than polish, because it's the foundation of a voice that can't be replicated. This is why so many thinkers, writers, and artists throughout history have sought solitude, not as a rejection of people, but as a necessary ingredient in their work. They understood that while collaboration has its place, the deepest, most transformative insights are often born in the quiet hours no one else sees. Alone, you can wrestle with your own contradictions, push against your own limits, and listen for the truths that don't speak loudly enough to be heard in the crowd. Those truths might unsettle you at first, but they're the ones that tend to reshape everything you create afterward. In the end, the creative edge of being alone comes down to this. Solitude gives you room to hear yourself clearly, without interruption, without dilution. It allows you to build something before the world has a chance to tell you what it should be. And once you've experienced that kind of space, once you've felt what it's like to create without compromise, you start to guard it fiercely. Not because you want to shut the world out, but because you've seen how much more alive your work, your ideas, and your very self become when you give them the gift of being born in silence. When you step out of the constant exchange of emotions that comes with being closely tied to someone else, something subtle but powerful begins to happen. At first, it's disorienting. You're used to checking the emotional temperature of another person before you even know your own. You've been conditioned to adjust your tone, your energy, your words to keep balance or avoid conflict. But when you remove yourself from that constant negotiation, the static starts to clear. You begin to realize just how much of what you've been feeling all along wasn't even yours. It's not that other people intend to weigh you down. It's just what happens when you're deeply connected. Their highs become your highs. Their lows seep into your bones. Over time, it becomes harder to tell where you end and they begin. But in solitude, you start to notice the difference. You realize that the irritation you've been feeling isn't a permanent part of you. It's residue from constantly managing another's frustrations. The heaviness that used to linger in your chest doesn't belong to you at all. It's something you absorbed in the process of trying to keep the peace. The Stoics believed that our peace of mind depends not on events themselves, but on the judgments we attach to them. When you're alone, those judgments are finally yours, unfiltered and unshaped by someone else's lens. At first, this clarity can feel almost too sharp. You're not used to sitting with emotions without immediately explaining or justifying them to another person. There's no one to reassure you that you're overthinking, no one to distract you with their own crises. You're left to feel what you feel in full. And in that full, unmediated experience, you start to hear yourself again. You notice what actually excites you, not what you've been pretending to be excited about to match someone else's mood. You notice what truly irritates you, not just what's been convenient to argue over. Slowly, your emotional landscape stops being a shared space and starts becoming your own territory. This is where the detox really happens. Without the constant influx of another person's needs, moods, and unspoken expectations, your nervous system begins to settle. You stop waking up braced for emotional surprises. You stop rehearsing conversations in your head before they happen. You start moving through the day without the weight of invisible negotiations. Should I say this? Will this upset them? Do I need to fix this before it becomes a problem? The space left behind isn't empty, it's breathable. It's filled with your own rhythm, your own pace, your own sense of balance. Emotional independence doesn't mean you stop caring about others. It means you stop carrying them in ways that cost you yourself. In solitude, you learn to communicate those things to yourself first. You learn to validate your own emotions without waiting for someone else to acknowledge them. You give yourself permission to feel without the need to edit for someone else's comfort. And when you do re-enter connection with others, you do so from a place of groundedness rather than entanglement. One of the most surprising parts of this process is the way joy changes. When you're constantly linked to another person's emotional state, your joy is never entirely yours. It's either amplified by their happiness or dampened by their unhappiness. Alone, your joy becomes self-generated, steady, and less vulnerable to being pulled apart by someone else's storm. You start noticing the small, pure pleasures that were once background noise, the way light hits your kitchen in the morning, the sound of your own laughter at something only you find funny, the calm that comes from simply being in your own space. This emotional detox is not always comfortable. There will be moments when you feel the absence of someone else's emotional presence as a kind of emptiness. You might even feel the pull to seek out that old entanglement just to feel something familiar. But if you can resist the urge to fill the silence too quickly, you'll discover that the emptiness was never emptiness at all. It was space waiting to be reclaimed by you. Space where your own voice, long overshadowed, can begin to speak again. In the end, the emotional detox that comes from solitude is less about removing others from your life and more about removing the haze they unintentionally create around your inner world. It's about finally standing in the center of your own emotional weather without being swept away by someone else's storms. And once you've felt that kind of clarity, once you've experienced the quiet strength that comes from owning every feeling that passes through you, you understand why protecting it becomes non-negotiable. Because in that clarity, you don't just hear yourself again, you recognize yourself. And that recognition is the beginning of everything. When you choose to live on your own terms, without leaning on the structure of a partner or the validation of a group, the labels come quickly. Lonely, selfish, incomplete. These words aren't really about you. They're about the discomfort your independence stirs in others. You've stepped outside the script, and people don't quite know what to do with that. The system loves dependence because it's stable. A dependent person is easier to guide, easier to sell to, easier to keep in place. If your sense of self comes from your partner's approval or from your role within a group, you'll go to great lengths to protect it, even at the cost of your own truth. Dependence keeps you in line, but it also keeps the system safe. When you no longer need that structure to feel whole, you can't be controlled in the same way. Your decisions aren't dictated by fear of being left out, abandoned, or judged, and that makes you unpredictable, something the system doesn't know how to handle. It's no surprise, then, that independence gets mislabeled. They call it loneliness, because they can't imagine fulfillment without constant company. They call it selfishness because you prioritize your own path over the comfort of conformity. They call it incomplete because their idea of complete is built on the presence of someone else. This mislabeling works as a kind of social control. If independence is painted as something undesirable, fewer people will pursue it. If staying single is framed as failure, people will rush to couple up, even if it means silencing parts of themselves to fit the mold. The system doesn't need to chain you physically. It only needs to shape your beliefs about what makes life meaningful. That's why the choice to live free, truly free, is so radical. It's not just about you. It's about refusing to reinforce a cycle that trades authenticity for acceptance. Independence is threatening because it's proof that you can live without constant validation. You don't need someone to tell you who you are, to make your choices feel legitimate, or to keep you from feeling empty. This isn't about rejecting love or connection. It's about removing need from the equation. Love given freely, without dependence, is one of the purest forms of it. But to reach that point, you have to stand firmly on your own. And yet, this kind of freedom isn't easy to hold. It comes with its own challenges. There will be days when the weight of being fully responsible for your own life feels heavier than you expected. No one else is there to take the blame when you fall, and no one else gets the credit when you succeed. You own it all. But that's the point. Freedom without ownership isn't real freedom. It's just another form of dependence disguised as choice. The truth is, people fear what they secretly want. Those who criticize your independence often wish they had the courage to claim their own. They might not admit it, even to themselves, but your example forces them to confront the compromises they've made. It's easier to dismiss you than to question whether they've settled for something smaller than what they truly wanted. That's why standing in your freedom isn't just a personal choice. It's an act that can shift the people around you, even if it's met with resistance at first. So when they call you lonely, remember that solitude can be a source of power. When they call you selfish, remember that self-respect is the foundation for every meaningful connection you'll ever have. When they call you incomplete, remember that wholeness doesn't come from what you add to your life, but from what you refuse to give away. The system may thrive on dependence, but your life doesn't have to. The mislabeling will fade in importance once you see it for what it is, a sign that you've stepped outside the boundaries others feel safest in. And once you've stepped out, you'll realize there's far more space out here than you were ever led to believe. Sovereignty isn't something you stumble into. It's something you earn, and the price is never cheap. To claim it, you have to let go of things most people cling to as proof of a good life. The shared plans that give you a sense of direction. The automatic affection that reassures you without asking for effort. The built-in companionship that makes weekends and holidays feel less empty. These are warm, comforting things, but they come with strings attached. Strings that can quietly pull you away from yourself. To step into true sovereignty means cutting some of those strings, and that's a decision most won't make because it demands giving up a comfort that feels too good to lose. In solitude, there is no one to validate or veto your decisions. Every choice is yours alone. That freedom can feel intoxicating and terrifying all at once. There's no one to share the weight when a decision turns out wrong, no one to split the blame with. But there's also no one to hold you back when your instincts are sharp and your vision is clear. Sovereignty is about owning both outcomes, the victories and the mistakes, with the same steady acceptance. You stop outsourcing responsibility for your life and start carrying it entirely yourself. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus wrote, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Solitude becomes the training ground for that mastery. Of course, the price you pay isn't only in tangible comforts. You pay in moments of doubt, in nights when silence feels heavier than you thought it could, in mornings when you wish there was someone beside you to share the small joys. Sovereignty can be lonely, not because you lack people in your life, but because you've chosen to live without depending on them to steady you. You learn to be your own anchor, to generate your own reassurance, to sit with discomfort instead of reaching for a quick fix in the form of someone else's presence. That skill, learning to hold your ground in the absence of external support, becomes one of your greatest strengths. The beauty of sovereignty is that it changes the quality of every connection you do choose to have. Without dependence, relationships are no longer about filling a void. They become choices made from abundance, not necessity. You're not asking someone to complete you or rescue you from yourself. You're inviting them to walk beside you because you want to, not because you have to. Jung often spoke of individuation, the process of becoming whole within oneself. Sovereignty is the lived expression of that wholeness. You can love deeply without the fear that losing someone will cause you to lose yourself. But the world rarely encourages this kind of self-rule. It thrives on mutual reliance, on the predictability of people who are bound to each other in ways that keep them in place. A sovereign individual can't be as easily managed or persuaded. You're less likely to accept what doesn't align with your values, less willing to stay in situations that don't serve your growth. That can make you harder to be around for those who prefer comfort over truth. You may find that some relationships fade because they were built on your willingness to compromise pieces of yourself to keep the peace. Sovereignty doesn't allow for that kind of self-erasure. The price also includes the need to confront yourself without distraction. There's no one to blame when you fail to act, no one to hide behind when you avoid the hard work. You see yourself clearly, your flaws, your blind spots, your excuses, and in that clarity, you have two choices: change or accept the truth of who you are without running from it. Both are difficult, but either one is a step toward the kind of freedom most people only talk about. The reward for paying this price is a life that is unmistakably your own. Every decision, every achievement, every mistake carries your signature. You move through the world without needing to dilute yourself for acceptance or bend yourself into a shape that fits someone else's plans. Your time is yours. Your energy is yours. Your mind is yours. That doesn't mean life becomes easier. It means it becomes yours in a way that nothing and no one can take from you. And once you've felt that, once you've lived days and months knowing that you are the sole author of your choices, it's almost impossible to give it up. The comfort of shared plans and automatic affection will always have their pull, but they'll never outweigh the quiet, steady power of knowing that you belong completely to yourself. That is the price of sovereignty and the reason it's worth paying. There's a point in solitude where something shifts. At first, being alone can feel like a space you're trying to fill, a room too quiet, a life missing a sound you've grown used to. You might catch yourself glancing at your phone, not because you have something to say, but because you're hoping someone will remind you that you matter. In the beginning, solitude tests you. It shows you every crack, every place you've relied on someone else to hold together. But if you stay with it long enough, if you resist the urge to rush back into the comfort of being needed or being validated, something remarkable begins to happen. The silence stops feeling like a punishment. It starts feeling like a kind of strength you didn't know you had. It's not a sudden transformation. It's gradual, almost unnoticeable at first. You wake up one morning and realize you don't feel the same pull to check in with someone before making a decision. You don't need someone to reassure you when doubt creeps in. You've learned to steady yourself. That's the quiet power of independence. It's not loud or boastful, but it's unshakable. You've stopped outsourcing your stability to others, and with that, you've taken back a kind of freedom most people never truly know. The Stoics understood this well. Epictetus taught that freedom comes when you control your own mind and desires, when you no longer depend on things outside yourself to be at peace. There's also a deep calm that comes with knowing you can handle life without leaning on someone else's emotional scaffolding. You've been through the moments of doubt, the long nights when you questioned if you were strong enough to stand alone, and you've emerged on the other side, not untouched, but unbroken. You no longer fear the quiet because you've learned to hear your own voice in it, and that voice has become louder, clearer, and more trustworthy than the noise of outside opinions. What's interesting is how much this changes your relationships, not by pushing people away, but by redefining why they're in your life. When you're no longer seeking someone to complete you, you start choosing people who expand you. Love, friendship, connection. These things stop being about filling a void and start being about sharing abundance. Jung believed that real connection could only happen between two whole individuals, each responsible for their own growth. When you've met yourself fully, you can finally meet others without the weight of unspoken need. Of course, this unshakable self isn't without vulnerability. You still feel pain, disappointment, and longing, but they no longer destabilize you. You're not afraid of loss in the same way, because you know you won't lose yourself with it. You've been alone before and survived. You've sat in the quiet and found not emptiness, but a rich inner life that no one else could give you. And when you carry that knowledge, it changes how you move through the world. There's also a humility in this stage. You recognize that self-reliance doesn't mean isolation. You can accept help without feeling dependent. You can love without fear of losing your footing. You can let people come and go without it shaking your foundation, because your foundation is no longer built on their presence. It's built on you. This is the paradox of true freedom. The more you belong to yourself, the more freely you can give yourself to others. And perhaps the most profound part is the way your sense of time changes. You no longer rush to fill your days to avoid being alone with your thoughts. You savor moments in a way you couldn't before, because you're not trying to escape them. Even ordinary experiences, a walk at dusk, a quiet meal, an evening with a book, take on a richness. They're not placeholders between bigger, more important events. They are the life itself. When you finally meet this version of yourself, you realize you were never truly incomplete. You were just obscured by noise, distraction, and dependence. And now that you've stripped that away, you see what was there all along, a self that is whole, steady, and deeply alive. That's the moment you become unshakable. And once you've felt that, you know you can never go back to the kind of life where your peace depends on someone else holding you together. Because the truth is, the self you've finally met isn't fragile. It's the strongest thing you'll ever stand on. In the end, the greatest freedom you'll ever know is the moment you realize you are already whole. Protect that truth, live by it, and never let the world convince you otherwise. Life will test you. It will push you to your limits. You will face storms that rattle the foundations of who you think you are, setbacks that make the ground beneath you feel uncertain, and moments that shake you to your very core. But in those moments, when the noise is deafening and the pressure is suffocating, one thing, just one, will decide your fate: your ability to remain calm. Because a calm mind is not a weak mind. It's the sharpest blade you will ever carry. A calm mind sees solutions where others see only problems. A calm mind turns obstacles into stepping stones. And in the words of the Stoics, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Think about it. Most people crumble under pressure, not because the challenge was unbeatable, but because they let fear and chaos take the wheel. But when you train your mind to be still, when you refuse to let emotion cloud your vision, you rise above the storm. You see clearly, you act with purpose, you move with precision, and in that stillness, you become unshakable. That is the power we're going to unlock together today. If you believe that mastering your mind is the first step toward mastering your life, then consider subscribing as a commitment to yourself. Let this be the moment you decide to think deeper, live stronger, and walk the Stoic path toward unbreakable inner peace. Life doesn't tap you on the shoulder and say, "Get ready, here it comes." It just hits. Sometimes it's a slow build, a creeping storm you can see in the distance, and sometimes it's a sudden wave that crashes without warning. You find yourself standing in the middle of it, unsure which way is forward, backward, or down. The ground feels like it's moving under your feet. Everything familiar becomes strange. And in those moments, The question isn't whether you'll face the storm, because you will. The question is whether you can keep your mind steady while it rages around you. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." It's in that space, between the chaos outside and the clarity inside, where the outcome of your life is decided. Calmness isn't something you need only when things are peaceful. Anyone can be composed when the air is still. The real test is whether you can remain calm when the air turns sharp, when voices are raised, when the future becomes uncertain. Most people believe calm is just a personality trait, something you're either born with or not. But that's not true. Calm is a skill, a muscle, and just like your body, your mind grows stronger the more you train it. It's not about ignoring what's happening or pretending it doesn't hurt. It's about keeping your head when others lose theirs. Carl Jung once observed, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." In the heat of a crisis, the choice to become steady instead of scattered changes everything. We live in a world that conditions us to react instantly. Messages pop up and we reply without thinking. A comment stings and we shoot one back. Someone cuts us off and our temper leaps before reason can catch up. Reaction feels natural because it's fast, but it's also dangerous. It's like handing the steering wheel of your life to whatever just startled you. And once you're reacting, you're no longer in control. The moment is controlling you. But when you respond, you take the wheel back. You create a gap between what happens and what you do next, and in that gap lies your power. Think about the last time you let your emotions run the show. Maybe you said something you didn't mean. Maybe you made a choice in frustration that you later regretted. In the moment, it probably felt justified. Emotions have a way of convincing us that they're the truth. But when the dust settled, clarity came, and with it, the realization that you could have handled it differently. That's why the mind must be trained before the storm arrives. Because when the pressure is on, you will default to your training. If you haven't trained your mind to pause, to breathe, to think before acting, the chaos will decide for you. The body has its own way of betraying us when we're under stress. Heart rate climbs, breath shortens, muscles tense. The mind senses danger and slips into survival mode, shutting down the rational part of the brain in favor of instinct. That's why fear and panic feel so overwhelming. They literally change the way you think. But here's the truth, you can reverse that process. The simplest and most overlooked tool you have is your breath. Slow it down and you slow your heart. Slow your heart and you steady your thoughts. Even a few deep breaths can remind your nervous system that you are not in immediate danger, that you are safe enough to think clearly. It's the same technique Navy divers, elite athletes and surgeons use in high-pressure moments. But calming your breath is just the beginning. The mind must also be taught to see differently. When you see an obstacle as a problem, it feels heavy, immovable, final. But when you see it as a challenge, something changes. A challenge is something to engage with, to overcome, to learn from. The obstacle might be the same, but your relationship to it transforms. Epictetus taught, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This isn't just philosophy, it's practical survival. The moment you shift how you frame an event, you take away its ability to control you. And yet reframing doesn't mean lying to yourself. It doesn't mean painting a disaster in bright colors and pretending it's a gift. It's about being honest with what's in front of you, and then choosing the angle that makes you stronger rather than weaker. When something goes wrong, instead of "why me?" you ask, "What can this teach me?" The first question makes you a victim. The second makes you a student of life. That shift alone can turn despair into determination. Thomas Edison, after thousands of failed attempts at creating the light bulb, famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." The facts didn't change. His frame did. Of course, this kind of thinking doesn't appear out of nowhere. You can't expect to step into a high-pressure moment and suddenly be calm if you've spent every day before that reacting to every little thing. Mental steadiness is built in the quiet moments, in small daily choices. It's built when you decide to let go of a small annoyance instead of feeding it. It's built when you choose to listen before speaking. It's built when you catch yourself rushing and take a breath instead. Each time you do, you lay another brick in the foundation of your composure. Training your mind isn't a single habit, it's a collection of them. Meditation teaches you to notice your thoughts without getting lost in them. Visualization teaches you to see yourself succeeding before the moment arrives. Physical exercise teaches you to endure discomfort and keep going. Reading expands your understanding of the world and sharpens your thinking. Each habit strengthens a different part of your mental armor. And when they're combined, they prepare you to face what you can't predict. Your environment matters too. Spend enough time around panicked people and their energy becomes yours. Surround yourself with people who think clearly and their steadiness will steady you. Jung once wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." Choose the people who transform you for the better, who remind you of your own ability to stand calm in the storm, because the storm will come. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but it will. And when it does, you will either be swept up in its wind or stand unmoved in its center. That choice isn't made in the moment. It's made now, in the quiet hours, in the daily discipline of training your mind to be calm. You do it not because life will be gentle, but because it won't. And when it's not, you'll be ready. A calm mind has a way of cutting through the fog that blinds everyone else. When fear grips the crowd, when noise fills the air, when confusion makes it hard to tell left from right, the calm mind can still see the path. It notices details that panic would erase. It catches opportunities others miss because they're too busy reacting to the chaos. Calm doesn't mean you feel nothing. It means you refuse to be ruled by what you feel. It's the difference between the archer who shoots in haste and misses, and the one who breathes, waits for the wind to shift, and releases with precision. In moments where decisions matter most, speed without clarity is a trap. Calmness gives you the clarity to act at exactly the right moment, in exactly the right way. The reason calmness holds so much power is that it changes the rules of the game. When others are reacting to the surface, the calm mind looks beneath it. It sees the root of the problem, not just its symptoms. Carl Jung once wrote, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." Panic looks outward, desperate to control circumstances. Calm looks inward, determined to master the self. That mastery allows you to step outside the storm's rhythm and create your own. Suddenly, you're not just surviving the moment, you're shaping it. This isn't about moving slowly or hesitating when it's time to act. Calmness is not the absence of movement, it's the presence of control. It's the warrior who stands still while the battlefield swirls, waiting for the one opening that will change everything. The world often mistakes loudness for strength, but in truth, strength is found in the steady hand, the measured word, the unshaken gaze. When you remain calm in moments where everyone else is losing balance, you stand out, not because you tried to, but because steadiness has become rare, and what is rare becomes valuable. Calmness also protects you from making decisions you can't take back. We've all felt the regret of words spoken too quickly or actions taken in a rush of emotion. In those moments, the mind isn't thinking, it's defending, attacking, escaping. The calm mind doesn't escape the emotion, but it learns to let the first wave pass before making a move. It knows that even in urgency, there's power in a pause. That pause is where wisdom lives. It's where you can weigh not only what you want to do, but what will serve you best in the long run. Think of the difference between a candle and a lighthouse. A candle flickers in the slightest breeze, its light fragile and short-lived. A lighthouse stands through storms, guiding ships without faltering. Calmness turns you from the candle into the lighthouse. The sea may rage, but you remain steady, casting light where it's needed most. In a panicked state, your mind will search for safety in the wrong places, quick fixes, impulsive actions, someone else's lead. In a calm state, you become the source of stability for yourself and, often, for others. The truth is, calmness isn't just an advantage in moments of crisis. It's an advantage in every area of life. In negotiation, the calm person listens more than they speak, and in that listening, they gain the upper hand. In relationships, the calm person hears the pain beneath the words and responds to that, instead of reacting to the surface sting. In personal growth, the calm person can face uncomfortable truths without running from them. As Seneca once said, "No person has the power to have everything they want, but it is in their power not to want what they do not have, and to cheerfully put to good use what they do have." Calmness gives you that power, the ability to meet reality as it is and work with it instead of fighting against it. This kind of composure doesn't mean life will be free from chaos. It means that chaos loses its ability to dictate your choices. You can't stop the waves, but you can learn to sail through them. And when others see you navigate storms without losing your way, they begin to trust you. Not because you claim to have all the answers, but because you refuse to be swept away. Calmness earns respect without asking for it. It turns you into the person people look to when things get uncertain. Of course, the challenge is that calmness doesn't come naturally when pressure rises. Instinct urges us to act fast, to fix things, to fight or flee. That's why the ability to remain steady is so powerful, because it's not instinctive, it's intentional. It's a choice made over and over again until it becomes part of who you are. Every moment you resist the pull of panic, you strengthen the muscle of control. Every time you breathe through the impulse to react, you prove to yourself that you are not at the mercy of the moment. When you realize that calmness is a skill, not a gift, it changes how you approach challenges. Instead of waiting for life to throw you into a storm and hoping you'll figure it out, you start training in the quiet. You learn to pause in everyday moments, before replying to a message, before voicing a frustration, before making a decision you can't reverse. These small practices add up, so when the real pressure comes, your mind knows what to do. In the end, calmness is real power because it's freedom. Freedom from being pushed and pulled by every shift in circumstance. Freedom from becoming someone you don't recognize in moments of stress. Freedom to choose your next step instead of having it chosen for you by fear. And in that freedom, you find a strength that no amount of force or noise can ever match. You become the steady ground in an unsteady world, and from that ground you can move anywhere you choose. We've all been there. That sudden surge of anger that tightens your chest, the rush of fear that makes your thoughts scatter, the wave of panic that demands you do something, anything, right now. In those moments you feel like you're in control because you're acting. But later, when the moment has passed and the emotions have cooled, you see it for what it was. Not action, but reaction. and reaction often comes with a cost far greater than we realize in the moment. Words spoken without thought can leave cracks in relationships that never fully heal. Rash decisions made in a fog of frustration can close doors you didn't even know you wanted to walk through. Sometimes those moments cost you your peace. Other times they cost you your future. The danger of letting emotions take over isn't that emotions are bad. They're not. They are part of being human. They give color to life, depth to experience. But when they take the wheel, reason is pushed into the back seat. You stop choosing your direction and start being driven by impulses that might not have your best interests in mind. Fear convinces you to run when you need to stand still. Anger urges you to fight when the wiser choice is to walk away. Impatience tells you to force things before they're ready. What's tricky is that in the heat of the moment, emotions don't feel like noise. They feel like truth. When someone insults you, the anger feels justified. When something threatens you, the fear feels protective. But not everything that feels true is wise. Emotion gives you the energy to act, but without the guidance of calm thought, that energy can turn destructive. It's like having a powerful river with no banks to guide it. It floods everything in its path. Many people have lost more to their own unchecked reactions than to the challenges life has thrown at them. It's worth remembering that the most important moments in life often leave no time for do-overs. An opportunity presents itself, and you either step toward it or you don't. A relationship hits a breaking point, and what you say in that moment either opens a door or closes it forever. One careless email sent in frustration can undo months of trust. One outburst in the wrong setting can reshape the way people see you. These are the hidden costs of letting emotions lead, the kind you don't see until they've already been paid. And there's another layer. Every time you give in to emotional impulse, you reinforce the habit. You teach your mind that this is how you handle stress. The more you do it, the more automatic it becomes. Before long, it's not just certain situations that trigger you. It's almost everything. You start living on edge, ready to react before you've even thought about whether the situation requires a reaction at all. This is why the Stoics placed so much value on self-mastery. As Seneca put it, "No man is free who is a slave to himself." When you're at the mercy of your emotions, you can't claim to be in control of your life. But there's a flip side to this truth, and it's one of the most empowering realizations you can have. Every time you resist that impulse, every time you pause before speaking, take a breath before acting, you're breaking the pattern. You're teaching your mind a new way to operate. You're proving to yourself that you can feel something deeply without being controlled by it. The power isn't in never feeling anger, fear, or panic. It's in refusing to let them dictate the terms of your life. The cost of letting emotions take over can also be invisible at first. Maybe no one calls you out. Maybe the damage is subtle, a quiet loss of trust, a shift in how someone includes you, an opportunity that doesn't come your way again. You may never even know what was lost. But whether or not you see it, those costs are real. They accumulate, and if left unchecked, they can shape the entire trajectory of your life. That's why calmness under pressure isn't just a nice trait to have. It's a form of protection. It guards your relationships, your reputation, your future. It ensures that when you make a move, it's intentional, not just emotional. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." That power to revoke is the essence of self-control. It's the decision to see the emotion for what it is, information, not command, and then choose what to do with it. In the end, the cost of letting emotions take over is far greater than the temporary discomfort of holding back. The momentary satisfaction of getting it off your chest fades quickly, but the consequences can linger for years. And here's the irony. The more you learn to stay calm, the more influence you actually have. People listen to those who can stay composed. They trust them. They look to them in moments of uncertainty. The very thing emotions promise, power, is better achieved through their mastery, not their indulgence. So the next time you feel the heat rise, remember what's really at stake. Not just your pride in that moment, but the opportunities, the trust and the relationships that can only be protected by your calm. You won't always get it perfect, and you don't need to. What matters is that you choose, as often as you can, to keep your mind steady when your emotions want to take the lead. Because when you do, you're not just saving yourself from regret, you're building the kind of life that can withstand whatever comes. When fear takes over, something profound happens inside your brain. It's not just a feeling, it's a shift in the way your entire system operates. In moments of perceived danger, your brain's alarm system, the amygdala, sounds off like a siren. That signal races through your body, flooding it with adrenaline and cortisol, the stress hormones designed to keep you alive. In an instant, your heart pounds faster to pump blood to your muscles, your breathing quickens, and your vision sharpens on what you think is the threat. This ancient survival mechanism once saved our ancestors from predators, but in modern life, it can be triggered by a harsh email, a tense conversation, or an unexpected challenge. The body reacts as though your life depends on it, even when the danger is not physical at all. In those moments, something else happens. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for reasoning, problem-solving, and long-term planning, begins to shut down. It's as though the wise leader of your mind has been pushed aside, and the most primitive part has seized control. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This is what he meant in practice. When fear hijacks your brain, it drives your behavior without asking for permission and without considering the consequences. You stop choosing your actions, you start reacting to everything. The shift from choice to reaction is subtle but powerful. You may believe you're still in control because you're acting, but in reality, those actions are being decided by survival instincts, not conscious thought. This is why people say or do things in the heat of the moment that they later regret. The decision wasn't made from a place of clarity, it was made from a place of urgency. The brain was in fight, flight, or freeze mode, where the only goal is to end the perceived threat as quickly as possible. The trouble is, in life's everyday challenges, that threat might be a misunderstanding, a delay, or a difficult decision, things that can't be solved by instinct alone. When survival mode takes over, time itself can feel distorted. Seconds stretch into what feels like minutes. The mind becomes hyper-focused on what's immediately in front of you, and everything else fades into the background. This tunnel vision can be helpful if you're crossing a busy street and need to react quickly to a car you didn't see. But in emotional situations, an argument with a partner, a high-stakes meeting, an important choice, tunnel vision blinds you to the bigger picture. The mind becomes obsessed with winning the moment rather than succeeding in the long run. Fear is persuasive because it feels real. The rush of adrenaline makes you believe you must act now, that there's no time to think. But most of the time, there is time, if you create it. The problem is that in the grip of fear, the brain's chemistry convinces you there isn't. This is why people who have trained themselves to pause, to breathe, and to slow down their thinking seem so composed under pressure. They're not immune to fear. They've just built a bridge between the primitive brain and the thinking brain, so the signal doesn't cut them off from reason entirely. And here's where the science meets wisdom. Practices like deep breathing, mindfulness, and deliberate pausing aren't just calming, They're physiological interventions. Slow, deep breaths send signals through the vagus nerve to the brain, telling it that the body is safe. This begins to reduce the flood of stress hormones and reactivates the prefrontal cortex. In other words, you're not just calming down in a vague sense, you're literally restoring your brain's capacity to think clearly. The challenge is that most of us aren't taught to recognize the moment when survival mode kicks in. We notice only after we've snapped at someone, made a rash decision, or walked away from something important. But with awareness, you can begin to feel the early signs. Your breath getting shallow, your shoulders tightening, your thoughts racing. These are the signals that the primitive brain is about to take over. And in that instant, you have a choice. Let it run the show, or intervene before control is lost. Think of it like driving a car down a steep hill. When you first feel the speed picking up, you still have the chance to tap the brakes and stay in control. But if you wait too long, the car will be going so fast that stopping without crashing becomes nearly impossible. Fear works the same way. The earlier you respond to it with intentional action, slowing your breath, grounding your thoughts, the easier it is to keep your thinking brain online. Wait too long, and you'll be swept up in the momentum of instinct. And it's not just fear. Anger, frustration, even excitement can trigger similar responses. Anytime your body senses a high-stakes moment, it prepares you to react quickly, which means it starts to bypass the slower, more deliberate parts of your mind. The irony is that in most of life's important moments, quick isn't what you need, clarity is. That clarity comes only from keeping your reasoning mind involved in the process. The science of losing control reveals why staying calm isn't just a matter of willpower, it's a matter of biology. Once you understand how your brain works under stress, you stop blaming yourself for feeling overwhelmed and start focusing on strategies that keep you steady. You begin to see calmness not as a personality trait you either have or don't have, but as a skill you can build, a skill rooted in the ability to manage the handoff between instinct and thought. Ultimately, the goal isn't to eliminate your emotional responses. Fear can protect you, anger can alert you to injustice, excitement can drive you toward opportunity. But these emotions should inform your choices, not dictate them. When you can feel the rush without losing the reins, you unlock a kind of power that isn't swayed by the rise and fall of the moment. You become the steady presence in a world that's constantly shifting. And that steadiness, born of understanding your own mind, becomes the foundation for everything else you achieve. Reaction feels fast. It feels alive. In the heat of the moment, it even feels right. Someone says something sharp, and the words leap from your mouth before you even register them. A decision lands on your lap, and your hand moves before your mind catches up. There's a fleeting rush in that instant, like you've done something, like you've taken control. But in truth, the opposite has happened. In those moments, control has already slipped away. You've surrendered it to the very thing that provoked you. You've let the outside world dictate your next move, and now you're following its lead instead of your own. The trap is subtle because it hides in the very speed that makes it feel powerful. Reaction convinces you that faster is stronger, but faster is often weaker because it bypasses the part of you that weighs, measures, and decides with purpose. It's the mind's equivalent of grabbing the first tool you see without checking if it's the right one, and once you've swung it, you can't take it back. Life is full of moments designed to provoke you, not always intentionally. Sometimes it's just the nature of living around other human beings. But every provocation is an invitation to give up control. The more you accept those invitations, the more you live at the mercy of other people's moods, opinions, and mistakes. It becomes a chain reaction. Someone's bad day becomes your bad day. Someone's panic becomes your panic. Before long, your state of mind is no longer your own. It's just a reflection of whatever you've been exposed to. The cost isn't just emotional, it's strategic. Reaction narrows your vision. It traps you in the moment, obsessed with the immediate hit, winning the argument, proving the point, defending yourself at the expense of the bigger picture. You might win the skirmish but lose the war. You might silence someone in the moment but lose their trust for years. And the worst part? You might never even realize what's been lost because reaction is too busy looking forward to the next move to look back at the damage left behind. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." Reaction skips that understanding entirely. It doesn't give you space to ask, "Why does this bother me? What is this really about?" It only knows that something has stirred you and demands you answer with equal force. But the things that provoke us most deeply often reveal more about us than about the person or situation in front of us. When you react without pause, you miss the chance to learn those lessons, and you set yourself up to repeat the same mistakes again and again. And yet, there's